It's aggressive. The time frame is short. I looked at the individuals that have decided to re-enlist to participate in this, and my concern is we do not have that participation moving ahead. This evening, you're looking to appoint 3 individuals out of the 5. I strongly recommend, or would like to recommend anyway, that you appoint all 5. I know 4 of them personally that have been involved in town government, and I haven't had the opportunity to meet Mrs. Copeland myself, but I know she's been heavily involved in this process as well. So in order to complete the task, and I know some of you will say that it's too many individuals. Well, I'm sorry, I served on the regional school committee, and there are 10 individuals on that committee. I think it's manageable. You have a high caliber of individuals here this evening, so take that into consideration. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So with that, anyone else wanting to speak under public comment? That was a good segue to our next topic, which are the interviews for appointments to the 3 citizen at large positions on the pre-K through 8 school building committee with terms to expire August 31st. So,
So we're not going to do Mike Newt?
no,
Okay.
oh, you are? I'm sorry. Okay. Well, we just had a huge amount of confusion about that. So, we're not, okay. I apologize for that. No. I think we should, okay. I'm sorry about that. We had a confusion between the 2 mics. Forget everything I just said. The next thing we're going to consider is an interview of Mr. Newt for the Capital Improvement and Planning Committee. And I know so please come up. And if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, your interest in this committee, and if you've looked into the committee, watched any of its prior meeting minutes or anything like that, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, it's nice to meet you all, and thank you for having me here. I'm sorry for the confusion before the meeting about whether I should come tonight. Yeah, my name's Mike Newt. I live at 49 Wildwood Drive. We rented in the town from 2022 to 2023, and then bought the same house in 2023. So we've been a resident for 3 years now. My background is I have a degree in economics and math from Cornell. And then I worked in consulting and in insurance for a total of 7 years, and did some corporate finance, some mergers and acquisitions, and a lot of risk management. And then I went back to grad school for a PhD in statistics. And I've been, working on applications of that in biotech since then, but I'm a researcher now for Rice University. I got interested in, town government in general, sort of as soon as we moved in, and, with everything that's gone on in town government in the last year, obviously there's, a lot of capital related items there. So I communicated with Jason a long time ago about how there were vacancies on the committee a lot. And it's a committee with, a vacancy now. And I felt that I could contribute. In general, so I like to volunteer and contribute, in any area where people have a lot to say, but few people are willing to, step in and actually take action. So I want to just sort of do my part. That's the reason I volunteered.
Well, I think you sound like you'd be a great addition to the committee. And I know that as a select board member, there's a particular point in the budget cycle where we come to the evaluation of capital articles. And I just find it's very important to get the input of the capital planning committee, because it's, I think, pretty specialized work. And I really rely on that expertise from that committee. So it sounds like you'd be well suited to it. Al, would we begin down there?
Yeah, I think you're very well qualified. I would like to have the Capital Improvement Committee meet with this board more frequently than it does, particularly not under the pressure of a budget deadline, because I think charting the path of the timing and sequencing and the choice of which capital projects we do needs very careful consideration, because we have 10 pounds of wishes and only a 5-pound bag to put them in. And so, yeah, I think you'll do a great job, and I'm always glad to hear that there's somebody else who knows what heteroskedasticity is.
It's true. Yeah. Um,
I have no questions at this time. Thanks for stepping forward and volunteering.
great.
So again, we apologize always for the confusion. The other mic is right here, by the way. And so that we saw him, we thought we've already appointed him. But anyway, so how do you do your Rice job remotely?
Well, so I took the Rice job. It was, I got the offer in July or of 2020, which was a time when sort of everyone was remote. And it was with a professor that I worked with before. So, you know, we kind of got into a groove of working remotely, and I go down there every 6 to 8 weeks or something like that, just to get FaceTime with people. But, you know, it's computational biology work. So everything's kind of, you don't have to be in person for it really. But I communicate with people regularly, and now I'm the only one left who's remote, but I'm kind of grandfathered in.
Oh,
So,
well, that's great. So I just wondered, given how far away
Yeah.
Texas is. So this capital committee has been in place since, I believe, 22 is when we finally got it going. And it's a permanent standing committee. We played around with how to do it for a few years. It's very important. If you have a chance, I know your little girl's with you. So if you could stay, you're going to hear Mr. Condiff come up and talk about a whole lot of projects that he's got cooking right now as far as roads, et cetera. So there is a need for this committee to do the job that needs to be done, because there really is. I mean, it's an old town. We need lots of things to be fixed and rebuilt and whatever. So it's a really important committee. I think you're going to like the others that are on the committee. It's got some really good people on it. So it's a good one to start out with.
yeah, I had a good meeting with Jason where we went through a lot of the sort of annual cycle and the process for making some of these, I guess, recommendations.
Yeah.
But-
He's an excellent chair. So I think you'll enjoy working with him too. So thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for volunteering. It is a new-ish committee and there's a lot of room for creative problem solving. So have fun.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, I move that the board appoint Mike Newt to the Capital Improvement and Planning Committee for a term to expire June 30, 2026. All those in favor? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you'll get an appointment letter, and you have to go get sworn in downstairs at the town clerk's office.
Within 30 days of that letter.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds
Some
good.
people miss it, then they have to come back and do this again. And you're 6/30/26 because you must be taking someone's place, because normally it's 3 years. So I don't know whose place. So we'll appoint you again next year.
Okay.
Then it'll be for 3 years.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, and so one other thing I'd like to take out of order, because Mr. Joey Truman is in the audience here, and we have on our agenda at the end, appointing Mr. Truman to the wastewater study committee. So Joey, if you can hear me, are you available to, thank you. So Al, I don't know if you want to introduce him or.
Sure. Mr. Truman is a student at UMass studying civil engineering, and he is also the recipient of a Southborough scholarship. And since I heard the word civil engineer, I immediately jumped and said, we could put this young man to work. And so, hopefully he'll be able to at least join us through the summer, get some experience, and potentially continue to advise us on the best way forward.
He was part of this last group of scholarship?
Yes,
Okay, I remember. Okay, good.
I don't, Joey, I don't know that you have anything you'd like to say on that. If so, unmute yourself and let us hear what you have to say.
Hi. No, I don't really have anything to say at the moment, but I'm thankful that I get the opportunity to join this committee. Thank you.
I move that we appoint Joey.
Well, first, does
Truman.
anyone else have any
I'm sorry, I
other
beg your pardon?
questions? Or,
And he'd be the 7th member. Bill doesn't count as a voting member, so 8.
Yeah.
Bill's 8, and so
Yeah.
it looks like it's room. But he'd just be here for the summer. Is that the plan?
Yeah, and then we'll have a conversation and see whether he wants to continue on remotely or whether he just wants to be here for the summer.
All right.
All right, anyone else have any questions? I don't. Okay,
So then I move that we appoint Joseph Truman to the wastewater study committee for a term to expire 6/30/26.
Second,
all right, all those in favor? All right,
Joe, you need to go to the town clerk and get sworn in sooner rather than later because we have some meetings coming up.
I'm sorry, you kind of cut in and out there.
You need to go be sworn in by the town clerk before you can officially serve. So if you could do that sooner rather than later, because we have several meetings coming up, including a meeting with Senator Eldridge.
Okay, sounds good.
all right, thank you. Okay, so now I think we will move on to interviews for appointments to the 3 citizen at-large positions for the 3K pre-K school building committee. The first person on the, and thank you to all 5 people who have applied so far. So the first on the agenda is Mr. Carmelek, if you want to come forward and just explain a little bit about your background. I hear one of the things that it looks like, you know, when people complete the volunteer form, there's an opportunity for you to upload your resume, but for whatever reason, we haven't seen those resumes. So if you could just give a little background about, you know.
Sure,
Sure.
sure. My degrees are in education and speech and language pathology from State University of New York in Fredonia. And I worked as for the Chautauqua County Board of Educational Cooperative Services for 5 years before moving to Massachusetts. And in that capacity, I was an itinerant in a countywide system that had 11 different sites that I was responsible for providing services at. After that, I moved to Massachusetts and gradually got into different areas of healthcare and started working with Premier Therapy Services, NovaCare, really focusing on my speech pathology background. Eventually moved into management and administration. And in that capacity, I think one of the things that was important in my looking at the school building committee was the fact that we had 31 sites that were being renovated and modified, going through a renewal process. And I provided the clinical support to assist the team that was doing that. Gradually, it moved away from clinical and into more of the aesthetics of what we were doing in that program. After that, we spent, gosh, I think it was 3 or 4 years going through that process. And what we didn't know is our parent company was Canadian. There were a handful of us that knew that several of our facilities were for sale. What we didn't know was the entire company was being sold. When the new buyer came in, I was asked to participate in a outpatient project with the new company, Genesis Healthcare. And I would be one of 5 people that worked on this national committee. What I found out was that the other 4 people were probably the reason why they were having difficulty with this program. And I met with the CEO and I told him, you know, I'm an operations person and what you need is a business development person. So I declined the position. And one of the people that worked for me recommended an agency that I eventually ended up accepting the position with them. And it was the regional person for New England. To make a long story short, my whole life philosophy was really in helping people. And what I found was this company was more interested in finances than helping people. And so our relationship ended, and I thought at 62, I was ready to retire. And got a call from a colleague who said, would you be interested in helping us out in Indiana? And so I thought I was going there for on a 6-month consultation, and it ended up being a 2.5-year consultation, which I decided I needed to be more with my family than commuting back and forth to Indiana. Lo and behold, in that time, we moved to Southborough. One of our sons lives in Southborough. Our other son lives half an hour south, and our daughter lives a half an hour north with their families. And that's what brings me here. Can I talk a little bit about the committee
Yes.
and my experience with the committee? My wife and I, Nancy, both have backgrounds in education. She taught for 38 years. And I guess it was probably in the fall of last year that we started paying more attention to what was going on with the building committee, and decided that we needed to get involved if we were going to address the situation, that it was best for us to learn more about what was happening and how the project was moving along. And I will be honest and say it was a frustrating experience. A lot of the meetings were discussions, and there was little opportunity for input. It was, this is the project and this is what we're doing, and we're not here to discuss options. That then transformed into us becoming actively involved in the Plan B proposal, because I really felt that two things happened. Number one, when I first started to ask questions about it, I was told to go to the original report that was produced in 2021, 22, sometime around there. And I looked at that report, and all of the analysis that they did on the Trottier School said that it could accept 5th grade. It was in the report in black and white, actually it was in green, where they said that they could do that. In a follow-up meeting that was attended by the superintendent, we were told that the preschool program at Finn School was being downsized because Northborough was going to be taking their students back to Northborough. So when you look at that, and in their initial analysis, they stated that they needed 32 classrooms and they only had 30 available there. But when you remove the Northborough students, half of the program from there, it opens up additional space in that program. So here we are in a situation where I was confused as to why there was such a big push to build a new building when the need didn't seem to be there. I think that it's important for the town to look at what resources they have, assess those resources, and then decide what it is that we need to do going forward, and build the community consensus to ensure that there is support for that program. That's my spiel.
Okay. Maybe we'll open up at this point to questions, Marguerite?
I don't have any. You're very qualified.
So Jean, I know how sincere you are about this. I know, I like you a lot. I know what you do with Rotary, et cetera. So I think you'd be a really good on this committee, but given what you just said, can you commit to being open-minded and objective about, we've got this matrix that Tim's put together with 8 choices and 16 different questions need to be answered. So 16 times 8 is a lot of different things. So all I want to know is that I know where you are. I know how sincere you believe we should put 5th grade in Trottier and add a grade onto Finn. So I get that. And I know why you think it. And there's lots of reasons to do that. But can you be open-minded to look at all these choices and then help this committee come forth with one that you believe can get a 2/3 approval at town meeting?
Absolutely. I mean, my last statement was, I want to make sure that there's town consensus when it comes time to make a decision.
Okay, and I want to also, I think you've got the right personality for this. I think that even though you were very clear about what you thought was the right answer, you always did it professionally, and you did it nicely, and you were very easy to talk to. So I commend you on that, and that's the type of person I think we need on this committee. So I think you will be a good choice tonight if you get votes, which I
Thank
think
you.
you will.
Gene, I'm happy you're in front of us today. I've seen some of the research you brought forward before and the details you have, so I'm excited that you have that as a background walking into this opportunity. My only question was kind of around what Kathy said, like this is a research committee, you know, the idea is to walk away with research and, you know, information in front of us and not really opinions.
Mhm.
Do you see any concern about that today, about just trying to make sure that that's the front and foremost goal?
No, that's what I was hoping would happen in the original committee, and that, in my opinion, did not happen. So yes, I want to be objective. I want to make sure that what we're doing is right for the town.
Okay, that's my only question.
I don't have any particular questions. I think I've known where you stood, and I think you're well qualified and by temperament and outlook.
Thank you.
So I agree with a lot of what's been said, but could you also just speak to, you know, what I anticipate is the idea behind this committee is, you know, not appointing people who all have a uniformity of thought or perspective about both what happened in the past and also about what's going to happen in the future. Can you speak a little bit? And I think you were getting at it a little bit with some of your work experience, but, you know, your experience being on committees where, you know, there's people who have opposing points of view and making sure that, you know, those people feel respected and you're really, you know, being collaborative so that, I mean, everyone's doing this as a volunteer.
Right.
Want to help create an environment where you don't dread going to the meeting because it's going to be so acrimonious. And, you know, I think 12 years of experience on various town boards, there are some times where that atmosphere is created. And so could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, you know, I think that what we're looking for is a thorough analysis of what it is that the town needs and what the town wants. We have to be objective about that. We have to look at the entire options that are available, do an analysis of that, and make sure that when we've completed that analysis, that it's not subjective, that it's not opinionated, that it's truly an objective analysis of the situation. And, you know, I mean,
But so, you know, collaborating with, getting along with people, respecting people's views, you don't, I mean, I guess what you're saying is if you're focused on being objective, that kind of takes care of itself.
I think if you ask some of the people in the audience behind me, they would tell you that what you're looking at and what your expectations are is something that I would bring to the table.
All right.
Andrew, can I ask one more question that I
Sure.
want to ask every time too? So do you have the time to do this? Because I think it's going to, I mean, my personal opinion is August 31st is pretty unrealistic, but that's okay. We'll start out with that. But do you have the time to do this?
Yes.
Okay. And are you,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
The idea is we go through all 5 and then we kind of discuss as a group. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Next is Howard Anderson.
Howard Anderson, 1 Meadow Lane, Southborough. I'm a registered electrical engineer. I have been registered since 1980. I got a BS in electrical engineering at Northeastern. I also got a master's of Engineering Management at Northeastern University. I worked for a co-op company for 4 years in my 5 years at Northeastern. And I also worked for them for an additional 20 years after that at 2 different times in my career. The bulk of my rest of my career was at Digital Equipment. We were building buildings as fast as we could buy them and retrofit them to make the computer geeks happy. And we had a creep factor at Digital. Every time we moved somebody into a building that had a little experience moving, they found ways of trying to get more than they needed. And so it was a interesting process to get what the company needed and not just what the people thought they needed. My thoughts about the committee are very clear. I think the original committee tried too hard to satisfy a lot of masters. I think there was a possibility that maybe the looking for a community center mired the committee's purpose. I also feel that shuttering a school that was in perfectly good condition to be used as a community center made no sense to me whatsoever. Barring that, I've been on all school building committees except for this one. We have dealt with more adversity.
Which one specifically?
Oh, I was on the first committee that was trying to decide whether we should even build Trotter. Then I was on the Trotter School Building Committee. I was on the Finn School Building Committee. I was on the high school, Regional High School Building Committee. And I was also on the Woodward Committee. However, I had to recuse myself because my company got the contract, the company I work for got the contract to do the architectural work. The town said I could still stay on the committee. I couldn't do that. So, you know, my name's on the plaque, and I did a lot of work before the fact, but I didn't build a school. The high school committee was probably the most grueling committee of all because there was a group of people in town that wanted their own Southborough High School. And my wife's a school teacher. Marion's a school teacher for 34 years in West Boylston. And actually my oldest son's an educator also. The problem I have is that we need to make sure that we have a focus on what the town needs. And so I think there's going to be a lot of work in this. I agree the schedule is more than, it's pretty difficult to meet that schedule. But I think more importantly, it's important to make sure the assets we have today are in good shape, and then the use of those assets can be determined. And that's what I'm looking forward to being on the committee.
Thank you. So I'll just start off with one question about, you know, could you speak to a little of your experience being on all those other committees? Did you have the other building committees?
Well, I'll tell you that the first committee that we were on, that was looking to see if we needed to build a new middle school, we decided we didn't need one.
Yeah.
And 3 years later, I was on the committee to do the middle school. The Trotter Middle School had its challenges. It was on the same property, you know, the contiguous property that Neary is on. And, but we ended up at the south side, pretty much up on a hill. Having said that, we still had to fill in parts of the building foundation with upwards of 6 or 7 feet of fill because it was, the conditions were so wet. And so we had a lot of challenges there. We were extremely fortunate to be able to find a place to put the septic because everybody told us there wasn't a dry piece of. And the other major factor with the Trotter School was the wetlands. The bridge that we built had to be a precast bridge because we couldn't impinge on the outer bounds of the wetlands of the stream. So that was quite a challenge. I think the other thing that was a challenge a lot of the neighbors on Parkerville didn't want to see the school. I am an engineer. I had a little difficulty understanding what problem was that it's a school. But anyway, we ended up having computer generated AutoCAD drawings for all the abutters to show them where we could potentially put shrubs and things to soften the view of the school. That's the extent that we went to for that school. We had a lot of good members on the committee. We all got along very well. We obviously had disagreements occasionally, but we always came up with a solution. As far as Finn was an addition and renovation project, a little bit different. That had some wetlands issues too, but we were fortunate enough to have enough land that we could do things on it. So it worked out very well. And it wasn't multi-story either. Woodward, my sons went to the original Woodward, and that had many problems. Site restrictions, water in the auditorium, a lot of difficult problems. So that decision was made to tear that down and put a new school in. One of the things that a lot of our committee members, after having been together with all the other school committees, is they were adamant about not having a flat roof. People in the industry know that flat roofs either leak or are gonna leak. There's nothing in between. So we spent quite a bit of money to put in a peak roof on Woodward. And the only thing we got a little bit of a jam on was the two unions, the carpenters and the steel workers, wanted their piece of the pie when they did the framework for the roof. So that was an interesting situation. I was aware of everything that was happening, but I wasn't working on the project. So I'm concerned about, I was concerned when the first go around with the NERI committee, they said they wanted to take over Woodward's at a community house. I couldn't believe I was even hearing that being proposed. And then when it came up for the final vote and they wanted to make Finn into it, I was similarly not very happy about that decision. I didn't know we were building, I didn't know the building committee even had the right to say, we need to do this because we want a community center. It really wasn't part of their charter in my estimation. But at any rate, the other thing is, I fully agree that the space can be done in any one of the three schools. I know there was some contention at the town meeting about 5th grade at Woodward. I've been assured by Brent Trottier that's okay. I'll buy that for now. The fact that potentially you could put a 5th grade at Woodward.
At Woodward?
Trottier. But the bottom line is, I just want to make sure that all of our school buildings are maintained, which I feel as though NERI has not been maintained, and it went on too long without being maintained. So that's my idea of what I'd like to do on the committee. I've dealt with a lot of clients, and their needs are always varied, and they always want to be the most important people in the room, but we can deal with it.
Right. Al, do you have any questions?
No, I think your experience speaks for itself. And
By the way, the other, did I mention it was Digital Equipment Corporation was the other committee, the other company I work for?
Yep.
Yeah, that was 20 years. Yeah.
Tim?
How familiar are you with the existing committee's work? Have you looked through all the documents? A lot of this is taking information from what they did. So I want to make sure you have a good solid foundation for 2 months of immediate effort.
I'm not 100% up to speed on that document, but I'm certainly going to do it if I get appointed.
Okay. Yeah, my only comment was, right now is the research phase. Like, I mean, we're looking forward, but it's really about collecting the information that
Sure.
exists today.
Yep.
So it's trying to consolidate all of that together. If there's other good options to consider, bring them forward at this point.
Yep.
But really consolidating more than necessarily expanding a lot. You know, obviously expansion is going to be part of this, but not a massive expansion.
Yeah. I was surprised that the handout at the last meeting, you even mentioned the 4th grade school at NERI. I didn't realize that was even an option anymore.
At Finn.
I thought it was a
He meant, so
Fourth
we're,
grade. 4th grade school at NERI.
well, that was the project that got voted down, but then Tim
Right, but
also
that was
put,
that was part of the A through G.
Yeah, but now it's a 4 grade school at Finn too, that's on there.
Okay,
There's two options. There's a 4 grade at Finn, and there is the existing project that was there that could still get fully looked at. You know, all the information was brought forward before. It should get re-looked at and make sure that everything has stayed current and nothing has changed from what that committee had worked on. So there's multiple things to look at, but there is one option that says new 4 grade at Neary on that charter at the moment.
okay. Okay, I didn't want to bring this up.
Yeah.
My sons went to Neary School. My sons played soccer at the fields at Neary School. There was a stream near the tennis courts, if I remember correctly. That was different colors of the rainbow. It was disgusting. I moved into town when they still had the dump. We used to physically dump trash where the soccer field is. And there's a soccer field right next to that. There's a soccer field on top of there. But the bottom line is the soil conditions at Neary School are beyond terrible. There's a groundwater problem. There's a stump dump where the softball field is. I have a problem doing any excavation of any magnitude at Neary School for whatever reason. I think the Neary School building can be used for some other purpose with minimal excavation. And I'm afraid the town should not be encumbered with excavation at the Neary School because of the difficulty with the groundwater. And it's in a bowl.
Yeah.
It's at the bottom of a hill.
I mean, right now, all I'll say is that there's one option on the table. That is what we last voted on at town meeting. That option's there to still be looked at on that thing, but we don't have to reiterate all the other pieces. It'll just be in their site conditions. Everything's within the document. It's just fact finding and bringing it forward. So if there's reports or anything, they can get linked into that spreadsheet to back up any considerations to be had. I just want to point out, this is bringing information together, not putting opinions forward again. You know, it's bringing
Yep.
factual information back together. So
Sure.
it's just doing that. That's what the point of this moment is. So if
But-
you feel like that could be something that we could do,
And
you
you
know,
feel that though it's not counterproductive to still conduct the 4 grade school at Neary?
I mean, I'm not saying anything besides it's on the paper right now to compare the options. There's another 7 options that are all valuable and they need to be looked at. They need to be brought forward. This is about consolidating the information. It's not to pick what's the best one to do or not to.
Okay.
So it's simply put the rest of them up to the level that was scrutinized before, advance the information 2 years forward from the last time it was actually really looked at, decide whether or not per square foot costs are appropriate, whatever it would be. We're taking all that information, bringing it forward, putting it all together, apples to apples across the board. And that's really what this is to do.
And okay. Thank you.
Okay, to address a couple things.
Sure.
The Neary Building Committee, nor this committee, was never charged with figuring out what to do if we closed the school. That was the select board's job to figure that out, which we would have done later if it had. So that's not your job. That's not that committee's job. So on the other committees that you were on, were you part of the decision to actually build that school, or had that decision been made and you were just there to get the school built?
All those committees we started out giving the town options of what to build.
Okay, then you had the vote, right? At
Yeah.
town meeting, it was approved,
Not every vote was successful.
right? But
That's
eventually
fine.
was, right? So I remember all the votes. So then it was, right? They eventually got.
But they were changed.
Right. And then though, you stayed on the committee all the way
If
through.
we had a committee that had a vote, voted down, we changed because we listened to the town meeting. So that's a big factor.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes,
Well,
but yes.
I think that's what we're trying to do here too.
We did a study committee. We got architects and engineers involved. We came up with options. The other thing I think that
But you were involved, I'm just trying to make sure you were involved all the way through. Okay,
All
so
the way
you were there to decide what to recommend and
Yep.
then to actually get it built once it passed, right?
yes, and I was
Okay.
there every day of the construction too.
All right. And then every one of those were funded in large part by the state. That's when we had a much bigger reimbursement rate. So we got 63. Okay. So you understood that process at that
Sure,
point. Okay.
Sure.
Now, and this is not a smart ass question. Why didn't you apply for the Neary Building Committee given your background?
I was hoping I wouldn't have to.
All right.
That's
Yeah, I just
not-
wondered.
That's as honest an answer as I can tell you. I'm 78 years old. I kind of would like to enjoy the rest of my life.
Okay, all
I-
right.
I
Okay.
don't know why I'm doing this, to be honest with you, because I know what's going to be involved and I know I can't just do a half, you know what job. So I want to be on it because I feel as though it needs to be righted.
Okay, so now, my two questions that I'm asking everybody, you heard me ask
Sure.
Jean, you've got the time to do this,
Yes,
okay? And you will do it objectively and look at all these different choices that are laid out on this matrix that were part of the charge?
what I've done all my life.
Okay, all right. Now, but one thing that puzzles me, you're an engineer, right? You're very,
Yes,
you look at things scientifically, right?
Yeah.
I'm surprised you have a problem today with what the site itself, given the work that was done to show what has been done to protect the site, what was going to be done. So, and you can deal with that later, but I'm just surprised that you, with your background, would have a problem with the
Okay.
site.
As an electrical engineer, I don't just have blinders and say, okay, my mechanical friends and my architect friends and my, you know, our mechanical engineering friends and site friends. We all work together for a project. When I work for the consulting firm, when I work for digital, if we didn't work together, the project wouldn't be successful. So we all had to realize that had to buy into the problems of a site as well as the good things of a site. If I know a site has problems and it's going to backfire on me later on, I'd be foolish not to bring it up.
Did you look at the work that our water consultant did and had an
No,
issue with it?
no, I have
All
not.
right, so you'll do that though, as part of this?
I will, but
right.
I've lived
So
here. long enough
obviously
to
you're
know
well-
Neary
I
is a
understand. You're
problem.
well qualified. I just wanted to make clear that
Yep.
you're not in charge. If we close, if
Yep.
whatever we end up with, Neary gets closed or Finn gets closed, it won't be that committee's
Yep.
job to figure out what to do. That'll be the town. That will be another
Well,
group that will figure that out.
Just to be clear, Neary doesn't have to be closed. Neary can become a town building.
That's what I mean, if it's close to school.
No, it's
Right,
closed.
so that's,
yeah.
this committee's job is to figure out how to
Yeah.
fix the Neary problem, right?
And I worked for the city of Newton for 4 years, and a lot of the schools that were segregated, physically segregated by location with the Mass Pike. They had a 100-year-old school, a 1950s edition, and of course they had fields and all the other things that go with it. The town ended up selling most of those to condo developers, and it was a win-win. You had older people going into the condos, and yet they still had the recreation capability at the schools. That was a great project that the town did, and there were 4 schools in Newton that did that.
All right, so use your imagination on this one then. Help us figure it out.
I've got
Okay.
more than enough imagination.
Okay, all right, Marguerite.
No, I just think you have a reassuring amount of experience over a very long time.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Kathy asked a very good question. I mean, it would have been a great resource on the Neary Building Committee, given your, now, one question, did you ever serve as chair as any of the
No.
building committees that?
No. Bob DiPietri was on most of the committees when we were doing those school projects, and he's a developer and he comes from a Perini background, so.
Yeah, okay.
But no, I'd rather not be the chair.
Well, never say never. Any other questions? Okay. So, the next, up is, Beth Whitcoff.
Thank you.
Good evening. Beth Wyckoff, 3 Schuyler Drive. I've been an educator for over 40 years. I retired as a middle school principal in 2019. I actually had the unique opportunity of opening a middle school brand new in 2004 in Franklin, Massachusetts, which was a fabulous experience. I retired and then went to work for the Massachusetts School Administrators Association, where I'm an assistant executive, as well as the leadership licensure coordinator for the state organization. In other words, we, teachers who are interested, guidance counselors who are interested in becoming administrators, enroll in our licensure program. We are authorized by the Department of Education to endorse the candidates in our program. And in the last 3 years that I've been the coordinator, we've successfully graduated 52 graduates who have gone on to administration and Very, very proud of that. And love the role of principal is a role where you are meeting with different constituents coming from various points of view, and it's your job to find compromise and find a solution. So I've very much been part of some very meetings that can be contentious, and also been part of solving the problems in those kinds of meetings. I've been a resident in Southborough for 42 years. I served on the regional school committee for 16 and the local school committee for 6. I was, Howard and I were on several of the building committees together, the Trottier, which failed at the first town meeting, and Bob DiPietri, immediately gave us advice. And as Howard mentioned, we listened and compromised. I was on the Finn Building Committee as well, and I was on the Algonquin Regional School Committee. We failed for a new build, and then we came back to the town with a compromise for an addition renovation. So I have that building experience as well.
All right. Al?
Gosh, I think you check all the boxes. I think the experience of serving on school building committees is important. And I think, there was a desire to have an educator on the committee and to speak from that. And you certainly have very solid credentials in that area. And so I don't have any further questions.
Thank you.
Your background's very impressive. So I found your background and your experience to be quite overwhelming and impressive in a good way.
Thank
So I don't have any actual questions right now.
So you went from Hopkinton to Franklin.
Correct.
So what was the impetus for doing that?
So I renewed my teaching career in 95. And so I was a teacher in Hopkinton Middle School. And I enrolled in the licensure program at the time from the Massachusetts Elementary School Principals Association. They've since merged with the Massachusetts Secondary School Principals Association. So now we're the Massachusetts School Principal Association. So we house, and our membership goes from pre-K to 12. I had been a teacher in Hopkinton, and I'd only been there 4 years. And the next thing I knew after I finished my licensure program, I was the interim principal. So I was there for 5 years and recognized that I could be more impactful in a new environment. And I joked in 03, 04, it was raining middle school principal openings in Massachusetts. And I immediately was attracted to Franklin because I got to open Annie Sullivan as a brand new middle school.
Interesting. You were a principal for a long time.
Yeah, 20 years.
So you kind of got thrown into it, it sounds like?
Well, no, I went to the licensure program. At the time in 1999, I thought, you know what, I did the program. I was also the Hopkinton varsity volleyball coach, teacher, serving on the school committee, mom, wife sometimes. He always knew he came after the dogs, but I just thought I'd take a year, and the principal left very suddenly, took a job in his hometown, and we hired a recently retired principal who became my mentor, Doug Fenninger from Dartmouth, rest his soul. He was a fabulous mentor. He met with the Teachers Association, and he met with the Parents Association, and went to the superintendent and said, "Nah, I don't want to do this. I'm retired." And so I stepped in and was the interim principal for a year, and then I was appointed, and I was principal there for 5 years.
So same 2 questions I asked before. Do you have the time to do this?
I do. The only thing I have one thing in the week of July, I think it's 21st, I have a 3-day conference for the Massachusetts.
Well, I'm
School
sure everybody's going to be
District
gone for a few days during the summer. I'm just trying to find people who have been gone for the whole summer and
No.
can't really do this. Okay. And will you be able to be objective about all the different choices that have been put in this charge as far as what we want you to look at and the different criteria that need to go into each of those?
Yes, I feel I can be objective.
See, where I think you will be really, really helpful. The one thing, you know, I've listened to some of the criticism, right, of the O committee, the Near East Bed committee, which I was on, and I was on the previous one too, and I was on the one 2013. Is that one of the things that just never seemed to be flushed out and discussed because the override issue seemed to be cost, and the second, site. I think the cost was much more than site, but those were two. And there just never was, to me, a healthy discussion about the educational benefits of whether it's 2 grade, 4 grade, whatever, of a modern school with what you need, with what these kids need. There's a lot of kids that need, it's called extra help. And this school was designed to try to help those kids. So I think that you would be very helpful in going back and looking at the work that was done. And because a whole group of people came together to design the school. It was parents and
Mhm.
teachers. We had this big modeling session. We had a guy that was leading us and they put it together with all these spaces in it to try to teach kids better than what we were able to do 20 years ago, where all the knowledge is. So I would think you would be very helpful in pulling that together and at least having an emphasis on that. If you've got 2 projects that cost the same, there may be one that's a lot better educationally. So I would think that you would be very helpful in that. And if you think I'm wrong about that, just say no.
No, that's my goal, and I've stated that publicly. I really feel time is of the essence. I want what's best for the children of Southborough, and I want to be helpful. Can I make one point on one of your options? It's option D, where you say it's 4 grades at Finn. It's actually 5 grades
Including pre-K.
because of pre-K. And it's pre-K to 3. So I just feel that I just wanted to point that out.
True statement. Okay, thank you.
I had one quick question because you have so long an expertise in this of watching students of different ages. What do you think? This is kind of a terrible question.
You can
I'm
ask me
sorry.
the greatest
Okay.
challenge.
No, what do you think is the biggest thing that the students in Southborough will need in 10 years?
So what they need in 10 years, the biggest thing that they need in 10 years, they need caring adults who care not only about their education, but care about them as people. They need good role models. They need a school environment that encourages collaboration among the students. And they need to be ready. We need to prepare them to be ready to make the next move over to high school.
And how will the buildings impact the town's ability to provide that?
Well, you know, I was not on the Annie Sullivan, I mean, I had the luxury of walking into Annie Sullivan Middle School already being built. For the time, and it was right after 9/11, they put what they thought were a lot of really good security measures in place. And so I understand the importance of physical space, but I also understand how you can make physical spaces work for you. I was sort of the scheduling master. There were 3 middle schools in Franklin, and I was sort of the master of scheduling. And we were able to create a schedule that allowed for a daily flex block, which is a block. Some elementary schools call it a win block, what I need now, where the students got the extra help built into the school day, and it didn't necessarily impact them having to stay after school for help. And I was able to accommodate that in our 14-day rotating schedule. You're welcome.
Okay, so I've got 2 questions. That have to do with kind of the challenges that we as the select board have in, forming this group. One is, we have drafted this as kind of an objective research committee. And one of the reasons was we're trying to be mindful of the fact that the ultimate decision about, grade configuration is something which is within the purview of the school committee, not a select board appointed committee or anything like that. And then the second is, we're trying to get the right mix of people who have, create a good committee where, there's opposing points of view, but everyone is kind of, in line with, we're trying to, be collaborative and respect each other and create an environment where everyone is, looking forward to the meeting and, you know, if one person's view doesn't prevail, no one's real, you know, too upset about it. So can you speak to those two concerns a little bit?
Well, as I noted earlier, I'm very used to meetings and holding the meetings and running the meetings where people are coming from very diverse viewpoints. And I was very successful in bringing meetings, particularly in special education, where parents have their perspective. Sometimes teachers have their perspective, and working on that compromise and building an IEP that everyone can accept. And I had a very high success rate of IEPs being accepted in my school. And so I understand the importance of listening to others and seeing their perspectives, but also it's important that people can challenge those perspectives with facts. And one of the things that struck me at the town meeting was it seemed intractable that fifth grade couldn't be at Trotter. And the first educational reason that the town meeting was told at that meeting was because fifth graders shouldn't ride the bus with eighth graders. So hardly the main reason why we should be making decisions about grade configurations as to the who rides the bus. And a school that provides a safe environment works very hard to point students in the right direction and give them opportunities to right mistakes is very important. And so I just don't think you allow, it's going to happen. I mean, there's going to be bullies, but it's how you deal with it. And it's the kinds of responses that you have. So I very much understand differing viewpoints.
Okay. So we have two more. Mark Davis.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I guess I might be considered a glutton for punishment,
That's the phrase I was going to use too.
but I have varied 45 years of construction experience, from straight land development to project managers of various commercial buildings, residential projects where I saved a farm and did some creative zoning. The height of my career, I was with Perini Corporation, and we did pre-zoning of 330 acres. And oddly enough, Raynham was about where Southborough is now at the time. They were on two interstates, but at the time, 495 hadn't been finished yet. I maintained an office down in Raynham, and it was when 495 opened all the way down to 24. I could literally sit and read the newspaper in my car. There was that little traffic down there. But we master planned a park. We worked with the community so that literally you could walk in and obtain a building permit. Everything was pre-approved. It took us 5 years to do that work with the community. From there, I worked with the MBTA and did some of the very same work, organizing community efforts on excess land parcels that the MBTA owned all across the eastern part of the state. And if I could be successful in Dudley Square of rehabbing a 150-year-old bus station and sit with the neighborhoods for 5 years, every 2 weeks, until we got something that made sense to them and got the city council in Boston to agree to it, and then we could put it out to bid. That's the kind of effort sometimes you need in a community. Now I bring us down to Framingham, where I ran the efforts through their town meeting to obtain approvals to renovate and own the Danforth School, which is now the Danforth Museum. We did a certified historic rehab and got town meeting to approve that. We fought against Framingham Union Hospital to obtain approvals to the Lincoln School down on Lincoln Street. And after 2 town meetings, ended up getting that instead of the hospital. We had nurses picketing outside a town meeting, but somehow we managed to figure out a way how to get town meeting to see that having a privately owned medical building near the hospital made sense. So I've been throughout Eastern Massachusetts working quietly with town meetings over the years, trying to find consensus and the ways to bring things forward. With Southborough, my initial work in this town was back in the 80s with the old American Optical building over on, at Straddles, over on the Pleasant Street connector, where a portion of the building sits in Southborough and a major portion sits in Framingham. We added the 2 top floors to that building, had to get it rezoned in Southborough. And it took us 2 town meetings to get that done. It was at that time the only 5-story building in town. Secret to that building is the bulk of it's in Framingham. We were able to hook it to MWRA sewer. The kitchen facility was in Southborough, but all the sewerage went toward Boston. It was a highly successful building, had a medical insurance business in it for years. And now I think it's been rehabbed into, is it U-Haul? But it sometimes takes several town meetings to come to a consensus as to what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. So I'm bringing to this committee the same sense that I walked in 3 years ago to the previous committee. No preconceived notions. I was the guy on the committee that asked a ton of questions. I understood the building process fully. I understand how to negotiate contracts. I understand how to bid and how to get the construction numbers to a point that you can follow them and understand them. I was deeply concerned. We had high contingency in some of our numbers, but that's the nature of the marketplace now. So I bring to it, I think, a lot of information from the previous committee. I bring to it some concerns that we need to develop the same type of analysis for Finn. And we didn't look at that building. So I'm open
Right.
and available.
Well, I don't have that many questions because I'm familiar with your prior work on the Erie School Building Committee and just the way that this has shaken out. You are the only person from the existing committee who has volunteered, as you say, glutton for punishment to serve. And I think it would be important to have some continuity.
One of my original goals on the committee, it was basically I was concerned with the site and its location near the landfill. And very early in the sessions, I made the statement that I'm one that is not even sure we should have a school here, and took the time, made the effort to make sure we had professionals in that could guide us through that whole process. And at the end, I was satisfied that we had a safe site and one that was not affected by the landfill. Is it a challenging site? You're darn right it is. But I think we had professionals in there that guided us through that process.
All right, thank you. Marguerite?
Hi, Mark. As I understand it, you would be the only person from the prior committee to volunteer for this committee, correct?
I guess,
Not
oh yeah,
necessarily. There may be
Yeah.
one more.
Okay. And you do have the knowledge.
Well, I'm a bit old fashioned. And even though all the documents are electronically saved, I printed every single one of them off. So I have a stack this deep and can put my hands on just about every report and every document that we produced. And I'm not afraid to continue to ask questions, to continue to guide, particularly when it gets to building costs and building items.
Thank you.
Kathy?
So obviously I know Mr. Davis very well. All I'm going to say is he never missed a meeting. He was a pleasure to work with. He has a very relevant background and helped us a whole lot for a lot of things, but definitely with the site. He's the one that got me comfortable with the current Neary site. So I don't have any questions.
Okay.
I know what I need to know.
Tim?
Mark, I'm pretty familiar with a lot of your background from the meetings and stuff that I've watched, so I don't have any questions for you at this time.
Well, the only thing is I'll mention to you, I did reach out to get a copy of your matrix. I had to chuckle the night you came up with that. And I'm looking down at my sheet of paper and I had already started to develop the same thing. I said, we've got to get all this information in one big spreadsheet so that we can kind of compare and contrast. So I'm ready to help expand that idea.
I think it might gain a column or two as we get into it, so I'm afraid of how much bigger it's gonna get. Hoping it doesn't grow too much.
Yep.
You have a long and distinguished record of public service. I would hope that for this committee, I'd like to see fresh eyes. That's taking, having a new set of people looking at the choices in front of us, ahead of us, I think is important. Certainly might still get a phone call, but I think having a fresh set of eyes on this process is important.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Right. And then last but not least, I'm not going to, my computer ran out of battery and I didn't bring the charger thing. So, but I think Kelly Conklin is here remotely, right? Okay. So, last but not least, Kelly, if you want to introduce yourself and explain what you think you could bring to the committee.
Kelly, you're on mute.
There we go. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hear me now? Okay, good. So sorry that I'm not there in person. We're actually away on vacation. But it's our only vacation for the summer, so I should add that. I'm Kelly Conklin, 17 Sadie Hutt Lane. A little bit about our family. We moved to Southborough in 22. I have two boys. One is entering kindergarten in the fall, and the youngest is 18 months. I have been in education working with adolescents since I graduated. I have a master's of education from Lesley University. I started my career working in residential with in a therapeutic setting for adolescents with trauma. From there, I moved to public schools working as a behavior therapist, or someone that would be considered an assistant, a paraprofessional, working with kids with really challenging behavior. From there, I became a classroom teacher. I've taught 7th grade, 8th grade, and 6th grade English, and I love middle school. When we moved, I took a hopefully brief leave of absence to get us settled in Southborough. I was working in Acton, Boxborough, but I'm hoping to return to the classroom in the fall. One thing that I think is interesting about my resume in particular is that I've worked in Newton, I've worked in Maynard, and I've worked in Acton. And all three of the middle schools that I've taught in have been different makeups. Newton was a 6 to 8 building, Maynard was a 4 to 8 building, Acton was a 7 and 8 building. So I think I don't know. To me, that's a unique perspective that it sounds like the other members of the committee might not have. Truth be told, I am very new to town politics. After moving here, I really didn't start paying too close attention until the MBTA vote. What was it, September 23, 24? And then obviously I started paying attention to the NERI vote. I think one of the interesting things about education is that we're all students, right? We've all been to schools. We all have our own personal stories about how education was, how it should go. For reference, I was in middle school or just entering high school in 2004 when the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act was revamped, which basically meant that schools had to start including students with special education in their regular classes. So, funny fact, my high school was actually, sorry, now I'm just rambling. My high school almost lost accreditation because they were not doing an adequate job of supporting their special education students and integrating them with their general education students. So I do think that it's very easy for us to look back on our own experience as education and assume that it's being done in a certain way. However, education has changed significantly since the pandemic. I could not stress that enough. Students of all ages were taking classes remotely from their homes while their parents were working. Teachers were providing asynchronous work. I'm sure if you know a parent or have your own children, they could talk about it. It was crazy. And since then, behavior has changed. The way kids learn have changed. I viewed my students as basically having lost a year and a half's worth of education because I was getting them in 7th grade, but they were presenting more like 5th graders in terms of their skill and behavior. So we're still catching up from that. And again, I think it's important for us to remember that how it was when we were in school is not how it's being done today, because if that were the case, if it was like it when I was in school myself, there wouldn't be any special education students in our classes. And that is very much not how it's done. I am thinking as a person who has bought a home in this town and plans to be a resident for quite some time, as well as thinking as an educator who is thinking how the profession is going to change over the course of the next couple decades because of the integration of technology, the proliferation of AI, and what that is going to do for our children, what that is going to do for job potentials in the future. So that's my spiel on my resume. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Well, this is Andrew. I think you would bring a unique perspective on this based on your, your teaching experience there. And I think there's some value in having a newer resident on the committee as well. Marguerite?
What do you say about the impact of the pandemic and technology is daunting, and I completely believe you. I personally would have no idea how to build a school that would be a reasonable building to meet the needs of all of our students moving forward. So thank you.
Hi, Kelly, it's Kathy.
Hi.
So, I think you've got a great background. I appreciate some of the comments you've made. I think that you would be a great addition to this committee, but this is my worry. When you were at the last select board meeting, you prudently came up and asked, I think Tim and I, maybe Tim more than me, how much time it would take. And I think you got an answer that was not very realistic, which was 2 or 3 meetings. Do you have time to do this? It's not going to be 2 or 3 meetings.
I mean, my summer is open. As I mentioned, I'm anticipate going back to the classroom in the fall. So I think come then, my availability will certainly change as I will have to be managing my own kids and grading and all of the things that go into being a teacher. So for the summer, yes, I'm not quite sure what the fall is going to look like, if we're being honest.
That's honest. Second question is, this is one I've asked the other four. Will you be able to be totally objective and look at all possible choices that have been laid out in the charge, without being biased toward anyone?
Yeah, I mean, I do think based on what I've heard from the other applicants, I do worry about one particular option. So I'm not sure if I could be particularly biased about that, because I do have strong feelings about fifth going at Chaudier, just in terms of my own experience in the classroom, unless we were thinking of adding on to that school. But all other options I feel open about, and I think that we could come to a consensus.
All right, thank you.
Tim?
Kelly, thanks for stepping forward. I have two kids that are pretty much close to the same age as yours, so I can understand the time commitment to volunteer for this right now. How familiar are you with the NBC's work and all the documents that went into the other options? Like, are you pretty familiar? Like, what's your level of knowledge walking into this?
Truthfully, I didn't start attending their meetings until they were later in the option. So I think they had gotten down to maybe the last 12. I'm not extremely familiar with the nitty-gritty details of what those choices look like.
Okay, but you've like looked around a little bit. You kind of know where they exist, and you kind of that's my biggest concern, because there was a lot to go through there, and if you haven't started to navigate it, starting from zero would be a big step.
Yep.
Okay, that's all I have right now.
Thank you for applying. I don't think I have any questions at the moment.
All right. So we've heard from a lot of heard from all of our applicants here. So
Andrew, can I make a suggestion
Yes,
before we start
yes.
talking? We can decide. I'd already thought about what Bonnie proposed at the beginning. I actually think, given that we now know Jason Malinowski is not going to be on this, nor is Andrew Pfaff, that I think having two extra bodies might be very helpful on this committee. Historically, 9 has not been a great number, just because we don't have enough people doing it, but this time we do. Everyone has said they've got the time to do it. So I would at least like to entertain expanding the charge from 7 to 9 before we vote on the actual appointments.
yeah, I was going to say that's kind of a threshold question here, is the size of the committee, and I've warmed to this idea. I came in wanting to stick to what we wanted to do, but Al, what do you think?
9 makes quorums more difficult. 9 makes quorums more difficult. And I'm prepared to make a decision.
Okay. So, but is that you support, you want to just keep 7?
I think 7 is the right answer, but I've gone down in flames before.
Okay. Tim, what's your view?
I was thinking that 7 was better. I am concerned about quorum sizes as well.
Yeah, but just to repeat, we've asked everyone if they've got the time to do this, so I'm assuming that quorum shouldn't be a problem. That
I'm sorry. You can't just blur it out here. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I've got the floor, Patty. So I just don't think that should be an issue, given every person said they've got the time to do this. And it is going to take a lot of time. So that's why I asked the question, because it can't be one where people think they can just come, every once in a while. This is not that type
Well,
of.
does it also make sense? I mean, we have set the original expiry date of August.
Yeah.
And I think we've always had some uneasiness with how realistic that is.
And we can always change it again if we need to.
You think we should stick to August now, or just?
I think it's very unrealistic. We
Yep.
can always expand it later. We've got, July 15th, we've got an August meeting. So I just don't see, there's just a lot of information to be compiled. Yes, some of it's already there, as Tim knows. It looks like Tim's dug into this. So, I'm more concerned about, making sure we've got people who can really spend the time to do this because it is.
Well, it would,
It'll take
it
a lot
would
of time.
help if we gave some additional time to.
Yeah, so we could do that too at the same time.
Well, a quorum is, for 9 will be 5, correct?
Mm-hmm. And a quorum for 7 is 4. One more.
So I'm in favor of enlarging the size.
I would support that as well. So, and then if we did that, I would, point all of the applicants. I think that each one has a little bit of, something different to give, and I just cross my fingers and hope for positive dynamic.
Well, there's a lot of education in this group and there's
Yep.
a lot of building
Construction, yep.
background in this group. And that's what we asked for in this charge.
And we've also got a balance of some, people who lived in town for a long time and some people who are fairly new to town. All right, so I move that we increase the size of the committee from, I guess I'll make just two separate motions. The first, I move that we increase the size of the committee from 7 to 9.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Opposed? And
The 3-2.
next, I move that we expand extend the charge of the committee through from August 31st to September 30th.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
If you're going to do this, I think you have to actually expand the number of at-large positions.
Oh, okay. You're right. So of the 9, I move that we increase the number of at-large positions from 3 to 5.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? All those opposed? And okay, so then back to the motion I was about to make. I move that we extend the expiration date of the charge, as well as all the appointments that we've already done so far, from August 31st to September 30th.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? All those opposed? Okay. All right, so I think the natural vote then from there is to appoint all 5 of the applicants to the at-large positions. I think we've kind of debated this, but if there's any further discussion.
My one thought here might be that we leave one of the positions open for anybody else that might want to apply on going forward. I did have one person I tried to talk to that was on vacation this week and they didn't get an application in and they were interested in talking more. So I don't know if that would materialize or not.
I think the 5 that applied stepped up and I think they're all well qualified as we heard. So I would make a motion to appoint the 5 candidates that we interviewed tonight.
I agree with you. All right,
So that's the motion.
all right. I'll second that motion. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, so everyone who came to speak, we voted to appoint you. Thank you for your suggestion at the beginning of the meeting. Bonnie, I know often we have different points of view, but I thought all right. I think maybe we reached a natural break point in the meeting where we would take a little recess. All right, so let's have a 5-minute recess.
So, no, but I'll ask you. All right. Okay. I'll ask. I have.
I have some concerns about. That's my patience. Take a look at, yeah, once I look at the. Station and do that observation. I'm saying it's.
No, we're talking about something
Oh, yeah. Okay, are we ready to begin? Nope, Marguerite's not here. Okay. I'm ready. Okay. So we're back from our recess and the next.
Hurry up and wait.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is DPW project update, and we're gonna take the third of those subtopics first, which is the Wheelabrator contract and our DPW superintendent.
Good evening,
Kind of is
Bill
here.
Cundiff, DPW Superintendent. We touched on this briefly at your last meeting, I believe, but we did want to have John Butler attend to get a little more involved in the discussion. You may be aware or may not be aware, our contract with Wheelabrator is coming to an end, I believe, in July of 28. And so as that date.
It was 27. Is it 28?
It is 28. I checked the contract today. Nonetheless, there is a collaborative of communities that have reached out and have started discussions about negotiating a new contract with Wheelabrator. So I've been talking with John because I know John has a lot of experience with the transfer station and the costs associated with the transfer station and doing a lot of the analytics a few years ago. So we had a conversation and he suggested volunteering some of his efforts and times, which I wholeheartedly support, to help through the discussions and negotiations as we work towards that 2028 deadline.
Okay. Well, that was my first year on the advisory committee. I think it was 2019.
20.
Okay. 2020. When you put together your presentation about Wheelabrator and pay as you throw, all that stuff, and the survey of the surrounding transfer stations. So you have a great base of knowledge to go off of. I think it's a good idea. Kathy?
Well, all I would add is the reason, so that was the old capital committee that advisory was part of before we ended up with the standing committee. And what John specifically looked at was whether we need a new hopper or not. That's where we started.
Right.
So that's where I'll get new hopper, because Karen had that
Oh, that's right.
in the
That's right.
capital plan. So that's kind of where he started and then went from there and of course did his normal thorough job as far as explaining how the trash world works to us.
So yes, it was 2020, and it ended up being a pretty thorough review of the transfer station economics and the sort of solid waste disposal economics in New England. And since I knew that this Wheelabrator, by the way, it's no longer Wheelabrator, it's now Win Waste Innovations is the current name of the company formerly known as Wheelabrator, that contract was coming due. there's a large gap between the contract price that we're paying for tipping now at the facility in Millbury and the current market price. And so in all probability, there'll be a significant change associated with the new contract, and that affects the entire economics. It's 50 years since the town built the transfer station and 40 years that Millbury will be in operation at the time of the conclusion of this. It's probably a good idea to look at the economics of this in a fundamental kind of way, which would be updating the 2020 work and just, asking, you collectively asking yourselves is this, we want to keep doing it exactly the same way? Because there will be change, quite a bit of change in the cost of tipping fees going forward, which could affect thinking about how you want to do this. There's a great deal, under state law, there's a great deal of flexibility about how the town approaches solid waste disposal. You're under very few obligations with regard to handling that, unlike in, for example, schools or police or those highly regulated areas. It's only regulation as with regard to safe disposal. So given that, and that it's a long time since we've been doing it this way, it seemed a good idea to look at it pretty fundamentally. It may very well be that the negotiations, as Mr. Cundiff was saying, are substantially undertaken by the organization of 36 towns that are cities and towns that are involved today. So the negotiation may be substantially out of our hands, but consideration of the effects of the outcome of that are very much in your hands. And so it seemed that understanding it in a very basic level was a good idea. So that's sort of why I volunteered.
Okay. Tim, do you have any questions?
Not at this time.
Al?
Thanks for offering to do this. I'm sure you want to, are you sure you really want to step into should we have a gate, pay as you throw?
Well, I think that the details of that type are secondary questions versus sort of how the whole picture operates. And I do think that updating the 2020 work is a good idea at this time, since we're faced with very fundamental questions about signing a new long-term contract. And so when you're thinking about, hey, we have to go to town meeting and get approval for a new 20-year contract, it's good to have done your homework. And I knew that Bill was busy with a lot of other things, and I had this kind of expertise that it seemed a good idea to make use of.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So
wanted you to know
part
that-
of the 36 town consortium?
We are.
I didn't know that. So it's one big contract.
No,
Go ahead.
well, it's, to be clear, it could have a situation in which there was a district under Massachusetts law which would sign a contract. We do not have that. We have a loose collaboration of 36 towns that choose to negotiate together, but the contracts are signed. They're similar terms or identical terms, except for Millbury. They're identical terms, but they're signed with each individual town. So you presumably will be presented with sometime before the expiration date with terms of a new contract, because it's longer than the 3 years stipulated by state law, and it's a commercial entity. You'll have to go to town meeting for approval. And in 1986, John Boland and Janice Conlon and I prepared this for town meeting approval in 1986 town meeting to do the first contract with Wheelabrator. So that will have to happen again if you choose to do that, but there aren't a lot of options.
Who does the negotiating for the 36 towns?
Well, that's being discussed right now by the towns. They've had several meetings beginning in February, and the largest community is Worcester by far. Newton is the second largest. So it runs from Brookline, which has dropped out. So it's Newton to Spencer, kind of a swath along the turnpike, you might say, north and south, all the way east-west. And they're deciding right now about how to organize to negotiate this and to hire a law firm collectively. But it's still at an early stage in terms of the community is getting organized to do this.
Okay. Did you say Newton dropped out?
No.
No, Brookline dropped
Brookline.
out. Newton is very much still in it, as is Worcester, and Worcester is they're the largest and they're taking a lead in this. And it's interesting that the lead person there is John Westerling, whom we know from the water discussions at Hopkinton. He was head of Hopkinton's Public Works and now is head of Worcester. And so he's kind of in a lead role.
Maybe you can move that Hopkinton contract along for us at the same time. So Bill, you're fine with.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I welcome the input and assistance.
I don't see how you say no to this,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
All right, so I think it makes sense to have a formal vote. Does that? I don't think I would phrase this of. I move that the board authorize John to. I mean, are you acting like as our agent or as just
No, I
gathering
don't think it's
information
that
and reporting
formal.
back to us, or what do you envision?
I merely wanted to know that, see, in the last time we did this, I interviewed a number of DPW chiefs. I just wanted to be able to say, I'm working on behalf of the town. And
Yeah.
that's, I think that if you have, if you merely assent, then I think
Sure.
we're fine.
All right, so
But,
go ahead.
so I would move that the board ask Mr. Butler to develop an analysis of our solid waste options and choices, working with Mr. Cundiff.
I think that's good.
Second. All those in favor?
Thank you. See you, Bill.
Have a good night.
And work with capital too, don't forget.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll see you in the fall.
All right.
Okay. Sinkholes, sidewalks.
Sinkholes, sidewalks, roads. So we've got a number of projects going on concurrently, as you might imagine. We recently went to town meeting and got funding for a number of capital projects, among which include Willow Street sinkhole. Currently Willow Street is about 75% complete in design. And interestingly, because this was a grant-funded design project, there's a number of milestones that we have to work with the state DER on applications, and they have a little checklist of things we need to do. So they did give us a grant of 220,000. So the engineering is a little more methodical than normally it might be. But we're moving along. We expect that that we'll have July of 25 design will be done, and then construction bidding will be anticipated in October of 25 with an award for construction in December of 25. We currently, along that project too, we have another grant application into the same entity to help with the funding of the construction. So in spite of the fact that we did get town meeting approval for the construction funding, we're still hopeful that we're going to offset that with some grant money. Northborough, if there's any questions, just jump in at any,
Should we ask questions one at a time as you go through each one?
whatever you like.
So,
That's fine with me.
so Andrew, just so you know, I warned Bill, when Bill was first hired, and there was a 6-month gap between when Karen resigned and when he was hired, right? So I had made this long list of stuff that I knew she was working on. And so I sat down with him. He said, gee, he goes, I've never seen a select board get into the weeds so much. I said, don't worry, we're not going to stay here. I just want to make sure nothing got lost. And so he's, in other words, quit micromanaging me. So I said tonight, I might be a little bit back in those weeds, but I won't stay there long. I'll get back out of them.
No,
So-
welcome it. I'm an open book, Kathy. You
I
know
know you
that.
are. I know you are.
Okay. Northborough Road sinkhole, that's moving along not quite as quickly. It's the same company where we're using PAR on both of those.
Okay, but stay on Willow Street. So
Okay.
3.75 million was approved at town meeting.
That's correct.
I know you're waiting maybe for a grant. Do you think 3.75 million is going to be all you need if you don't get the grant, that we've got enough money approved?
I think we will be fine financially with that project.
Okay.
Okay. Northborough Road sinkhole, design is about 50% done. They're expecting it to be 100% in August of 25. They're currently preparing permit applications because obviously these things go over streams. They anticipate that submittals will be completed by the end of summer of 25. That doesn't make sense. So, excuse me. Yeah, it sounds like they're working on a parallel schedule with Willow Street on that. This is some input from the consultant, so I don't,
VHB?
no, these two are par.
Okay.
Both of these are par. So
Bill, how is Northborough being funded? I don't know where you're getting the money for the design.
Northborough Road, we did submit an article for town meeting for that as well.
This past town meeting?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Central Street and John Street, I'm grouping those together because of their proximity to one another. We could save on potentially some construction funding because of their proximity. The projects are 100% complete with design. They've got permitted through the Conservation Commission. We're currently poised to put it out to bid and award the bid. I'm doing one final review before we do that. FY 26 paving.
900K is enough for that, you think? That's what you got approved?
We had two funding sources there. Central Street was different from John and Mitchell.
Yeah, you had 250 for Central Street and 900.
I did modify the scope slightly. Mitchell Street proved to be a little more complicated than we were expecting. There is a drainage pipe that goes under a retaining wall, which would drive the cost up tremendously. So Mitchell Street's not in as bad of condition as John Street. So we'll do the lower portion of Mitchell Street where that John Street intersection is, and then go up John Street from there.
So you got 900 and 250, so it's 1,150,000. That you think,
Correct.
even with that problem between the two, you'll be okay?
That's what I'm told from my engineers. Yes, correct.
And there's no grant money for this one? You know?
That's correct.
Okay, so, okay.
Yeah, so we had town meeting funding. If we need to supplement that to some minor extent, we would do so through Chapter 90. I don't expect that's going to be the case, though.
So you just and go up there go up from there for that drainage that you just mentioned. Does that mean that's going to be a future thing and then you deal with it in the future?
No, the concept was, well, there's two things with John and Mitchell. Neither of those roads really have an adequate turnaround area. So the goal was to get some of those things since we were out there with a major construction project. When VHB, this one's VHB, when VHB did their cost estimate, we saw that it was higher than we had anticipated, primarily because of that drainage situation under the wall. So we kind of pulled back the scope a little to make it more manageable.
But is that to be tackled at a later date? Or is it not?
It's at this point, it's not a priority. Okay.
But is it not a problem at the same time?
It's not ideal. I'm sure those pipes that are under that wall are corrugated metal pipes that will have a short shelf life on them. We can deal with it at a later time.
And it won't be detrimental to the work we're doing now. We're not doing things twice.
No,
Okay.
it's easy to segment that.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
FY 26 paving program, we're a little late in the season to be getting out, but I wanted to do a few things before we actually went out to bid. I wanted to solidify what we have available for funding primarily before we scoped out the work. I'm in the process of preparing the bid document. I expect we'll have it advertised probably next week. So that hopefully the beginning of next month we'll be taking in bids and awarding contract.
Have you now solidified what you've got available between the warrant articles that are still with money in chapter 90?
The Chapter 90 funds are somewhat allocated. We have the two tip projects that I'm still waiting for a scope from VHB on. They gave me a rough estimate of 1.2 million for the engineering on each of those, Corderville Road and Framingham Road.
And we have to pay for that.
We have to pay for the engineering.
Okay.
Correct. So I still don't have a hard price on that, but that's a loose price that they gave me for budgeting purposes. Then I have a number of other projects with regard to Chapter 90. Framingham Road, Framingham Road, Corderville Road. We did carry some money for Willow Street and Northborough Road in Chapter 90, just in case. Central Street sinkhole, we had carried design money, same with John and Mitchell. And then Oak Street sidewalk, we had some money reserved for Chapter 90. So that combined with our annual road maintenance means that we have about 1 million available for projects under this program. So I'm currently doing the quantities to make sure that we can fund the scope that I have laid out, which includes Parmenter Road, Edmonds Road, parts of Pine Hill Road, Waveney Road, Acre Bridge Road, parts of Corderville Road, Northborough Road between Main Street and Johnson. And that's it. Those projects, I focused on those for two reasons. They scored poorly in the pavement management plan. That's one. The magnitude of usage of the roads, that's two. And three, limited need for utility improvements. So no replacement of drainage pipes, no replacement of water mains, those sorts of things, just to keep the cost manageable and get more bang for our buck. So that's the approach we took on those. And like I said, we're looking to get that out to bid early.
The reason I'm trying to really zero in on the money piece of it is, we've been talking probably for 4 years now about possibly floating a big bond. So you've got a big chunk of money rather than wait every year for the annual appropriation.
Yes.
So Karen would wait every 2 years and do a new contract, right? So that's why I'm trying to really understand exactly where the money's coming from, what you've got listed here. So you think, once you get the bids in, that you're hoping that $1 million is going to cover these roads here as far as this, the normal paving contract?
Well, that's correct. I'm going to, however, make sure that we can fund the projects I've laid out. Haven't convinced myself that yet. I'm going to do that over the next week. And once I do that, I may expand the scope or reduce the scope based on the number. But to your point, I think we do need to think about a 5-year plan for major road improvements. As you know, the pavement management plan we had, and I did put a memo together for the select board. I'm not sure if you had a chance to look at it. The pavement management plan basically showed us that if we lay out $850,000 a year for road improvements, we're going to maintain the current status quo. So basically what you see out there today is the level that you'll consistently see if you invest $850,000. Now that $850,000 also is just pavement. That doesn't get into sidewalks, that doesn't get into guardrails, it doesn't get into utility improvements, drainage structures, etc. So the idea is that we come to the Springtown meeting with a plan, okay? And we could have 3 options, for example, a low end, a medium, and a high end, and ask the people, which one do you want to pick? And let them decide, if they want to be aggressive with the road improvements or if they want to maintain, a minor level. It's up to them. But we'll prioritize which roads are in the most need. We'll lay out the plans. We'll have the actual roads. And it's got to be a finite plan, meaning 5 years. That'll get that. So let me take a step back. we score all the roads with what's called an RSR, a road surface rating. From 0 to 100, it's just like your, grade school report card. So 70, 75 is just passing. Our roads are averaging currently about 72.5. Okay, so we're just there passing. And of course, it depends on the road you're on. Some might be an F. But the goal is to get that RSR value up on an average throughout the town. And then the cost to maintain those roads is where the savings is. So for example, there's different technologies and treatments now that you could use instead of the conventional, mill and overlay or full depth reclamation. Those are the most costly ways to repair these roads. And if you let them deteriorate and degrade to that level, it's going to cost more per mile to fix a road. If you catch it before it gets to that level and it's like seal coating your driveway. If you put that lower level treatment on top of the road, that will extend the life of the road, cost less, and you'll do more miles per year with the money that you get. So that's the goal here, is to get the roads averaging up higher than where we're at, and then reduce the overall cost per year for the maintenance, or extend the dollar, if you will.
So you're going to go ahead with what's listed here. You've got funding for a lot of it. You've got the paving program, and then you will come forth at next annual town meeting with this longer term 5-year plan that says, okay, I really do need to bond this to really get this done, or not.
That's correct.
Okay.
And we'll have a dollar amount, and we'll, go over the 5 years. One of the problems they ran into in Spencer with their plan was they did not account for the inflation. Of course, it was through COVID that they were implementing their program, but the construction cost went up, so the amount of roads they could do actually shrunk down. So. Any other
Okay.
questions on that?
Oh, go to the next one though.
Okay, Pine Hill Road. Pine Hill Road is probably the most complaints we get on is Pine Hill Road. We regularly get calls regarding Pine Hill. If I tallied it up, we probably get at least one a week. It's in bad shape. There's very little drainage, which actually is a good thing. The goal that I would like to do this year is do the worst sections, which is the lower section, the southern section from Framingham Town Line up to Nichols, and then hop, skip, and jump over that middle section. And then I don't think that side street has a name. They all have Pine Hill Road addresses, but basically after that stream crossing all the way up to Parmenter. There's very little utilities, catch basins. So those two segments are good. There's not much of an opportunity to put in sidewalks on either of those northern or southern sections due to right-of-way width or wetlands. So the theory is, next year or in the future, we can look at the sidewalk section in the middle portion of that. So that's it for Pine Hill. We're looking to include that as part of
That'll
our-
be this year.
We're looking to put that out to bid this year. Yeah.
Music to 2 of the 5 select board members.
Yeah, I know we've gotten surveys from the residents out there for some speed humps, and that's something we can talk about, but that's on the table. Lover's Lane, I put that in here. It's not part of our bidding program that we're doing, but we have an eye towards improving Lover's Lane. Really, it's a water line project. The idea is if we come to an agreement with Hopkinton, that money that we get from Hopkinton could be used to fund the water main replacement project as part of this. And Lover's Lane is in bad shape. I don't know if anybody's ever driven it, but there's area, it probably needs right-of-way fixing in addition to roadway fixing. It's just not in good shape. But we did send a survey crew out there. We got some baseline survey currently ongoing to get that base map so we can start working on a design. We've got our two tip projects, Corderville Road and Framingham Road. As you pointed out, Kathy, they're both, the way that works for people that don't know, TIP stands for Traffic Improvement Program and Transportation Improvement Program, and it's a state program. You have to solicit the state to get approved to get on the TIP program. We did that for both Framingham Road and for Corderville Road, the south portion. So we're on the TIP. It's going to take probably 5 to 7 years before we actually get some action out there. And that's how long the design process takes with all the state back and forth. But both of those projects are approved TIP projects. We're moving forward in the design phase.
So you've got the chapter 90 money set aside to do both of the.
Correct. RRFBs, those are rectangular rapid flashing beacons. They're pedestrian crosswalk signals. We've identified 6 locations that we felt warranted installation of these. And the state was offering the RRFBs for free to towns. We would just have to make sure those pedestrian crossings met their current standards. Most of them are pretty close to meeting the current standards, so it'd be a very small lift for us to get them done. I've heard through our engineer that some communities are starting to hear back from the state. We have not yet heard back. I'm hopeful that we at least get a few of the free crossing signals.
Remember, we told Fay and St. Mark's that we give it, we would provide it, but they had to pay for the installation.
That's right.
You know,
If those are locations approved by the state, yes. And then we have our sidewalk projects, ongoing design. I know Richards and Woodland just got approved through the Conservation Commission. Oak Hill Road is ongoing and Parkerville Road is ongoing. The funding of the sidewalks is going to be the question probably in the spring as well. We may include that as part of our pavement management project, or we may, currently the chapter 90 funding, I don't see going towards these sidewalks. I think the roads are the priority on this. And then if people wanted to approve the sidewalks, then they would.
For the sidewalks, do you think, or is it too early to say, of the 4 noted here, you do all of them at once, or you have to break it up into year by year, do a couple of them?
We'd probably group ones that made sense to group together.
Yeah.
It depends on if the town wanted to fund all of them.
Yeah.
Frankly.
This is premature, but it's $2.8 million for those 4. If you had those 4, what you think the cost is. A lot of people want sidewalks in this town, so it might just be a separate article.
Sure.
You might have the bond broken up into more than one part so people can pick and choose what they
Sure.
want to do.
All right. Well,
All right.
that's. The other memo you have here really just kind of fleshes out what you were talking about the RSR and.
I tried to make it very simple.
Yeah. And Tim, Bill made a presentation about the pavement management plan. It was last year, right?
It was.
All right. That really goes into a lot of this. There's a whole slide deck about it. I think Mr. Stivers worked,
Yep.
is one of the, what's the right word?
But he was a driver of.
Yeah, driver,
Doing it.
originator.
Yes.
Yeah, of bringing this to the town. And, it's a more scientific, objective way of formulating a plan for how you should use your, road improvement money. So I guess the bottom line is you're working with VHB to develop a funding proposal for a 5-year capital plan that will improve roadway conditions, targeting special town meeting. Are you going to work also with the capital?
Yes.
Committee on
Oh, yeah. I've got to get the scope from VHB before
Yep.
we can get that far, but yeah, that's the plan. One of the things I want to do is have some sessions where we educate people and people have input so that we're not just going to town meeting blind, we've got to have input.
You mean like sessions with the different boards or even just like a public meeting?
We could have public sessions.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, it's, I like your chart and I had actually done a back of the envelope calculation that basically said we need to be spending between 1.1 and 1.2 million, 1.1 to 1.2 million to begin to make a dent in the what I consider to be a backlog. I think we have, much as I don't like it, we have underfunded roads in this town for 20 plus years.
Oh, I think
And-
more than that.
Well,
I don't
as
remember that.
long as I've been, as long,
Well, Beta's number, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, was 14 million to get everything done that should be done.
Right.
And Al's number's right in the middle of what you are proposing here as far as going from 72 to 75.
Right.
All right.
the only question is, how do we find the money?
That is the
I
I
question.
don't think we're gonna
That's
figure
always
that
the
out tonight.
question, right?
Yeah.
I do have one just general question, because I've seen a number of these things about studies and all that, and I'm not super familiar with this part of it. So how much do we have to spend on studies to be able to do something? And how much can we just kind of have a plan that we get into? Because I know that a lot of the studies are for grant money and other things that are available. So do you have any kind of insight, just kind of thinking about why the study numbers always seem kind of like expensive and high? And would that money be able to go further quicker if we just started doing pieces of it?
Listen, I'm the biggest skeptic of hiring some of these engineers for some of these things. But the value there is they model these things. We have all of the data that's collected and a vehicle drives around town, takes photos of the roads, scores the roads individually, separate from, a human doing it. We do tweak it after that, however. And then based upon the data that we get back, we can manipulate different plans. If we do this road over here, what's that do to our score townwide? And you get almost a return on investment. If we spend this much money doing A, B, C, and D, is that the best return on investment for what we have? Or is there another combination? So the engineering and the studying of the data is critical, I think, on the front end.
Okay, and like the TIP is a state program, right? So that one,
That's right.
we're investing upfront money in engineering 5 years before we finally get to go start to fix the problem. I'm assuming we have 5 years of life expected on those roads that it lines up.
Well, you bring up a good point because you'll notice I have Corderville Road on here. I'm even looking at Framingham Road to do some very minor improvements because those roads are in such bad shape. Even though they're on the tip, I want to do some low level treatment to kind of smooth them out, basically. Something's got to get done on those.
But waiting for the TIP to come through is in our best interest as a town from a financial standpoint.
It will be essentially a new road that we get. So yes,
Okay.
yes, it's state money. I mean, granted, it's all tax money, but it's state money, not local funds.
Okay, awesome, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions or? I think that's it.
I think that's it. Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Well, how is Caitlin working out?
Caitlin's working out great.
Okay, good.
I do have, it's just very busy. I do need to make an effort to spend more time training.
Okay, good. So it was a good move.
Sorry, my watch is talking to me.
It was a good move.
Yes,
to hire-
absolutely.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bill. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is update on the wastewater study committee. And for this, I think I'll just turn it over to Al.
Yes, we have some slides. And this is in two parts, but the first part is the one we're going to do at this point. And it's an update on the activities of the wastewater committee and a little bit of focus on where we're going over the next few months. So can we pull those slides up? Yep. and I'll try and keep this as quickly as possible. So here's the update of the wastewater committee. We sometimes call ourselves the WC committee, which is very bad fun. But we need to begin assessing sites. And we believe we're going to need something on the order of an 1.5 acres to 3 acres for the plant, the actual place where the wasted water is treated. And then 5 to 15 acres for disposal. We've applied for a one-stop grant to help us assess sites. We've applied for 400,000, 75% would be from the state and 25% would be from Southborough. The Southborough piece can in part be in kind, but that would be sort of our commitment to the one-stop grant. Over the next few months, now that we went through a flurry of activity to get the one-stop grant out the door, we're going to really be spending some time focusing on how you actually pay for something like this. And one option is a DIF overlay, which would be an overlay district where some portion of the tax revenue from new growth might be allocated to this type of activity, betterments and grants and others. We're actually, I found out actually in the last day and a half or so that we're meeting with Senator Eldridge, and he's going to set us to meet us with the MWRA and something called the Clean Water Trust to, again, begin to understand the lay of the land for how you go about paying for this. And so, well, you can't build it until you figured out how to pay for it. So, yeah.
Pay for it with a DIF if you don't have a system yet.
Back up for a moment. Go back one set of slides. So we could actually establish a DIF in the next year. And that would then conceivably allow us to begin to raise a set of money. Again, this is still, we're babes in the woods on this yet, but we could establish a DIF overlay and then a portion of the new growth.
But how would you get new growth without the system? It just looks to me like it's chicken and egg here.
Well, you even once you establish the different, let's just use a simple example. Suppose that we said it was 1,000 feet on either side of Route 9. Now, over the next 5 years, there are going to be things that happen in that 1,000 feet north and south of Route 9, and that would be new growth. That new growth, that portion of the growth could be put into a fund that would then begin to pay for the system. And or if there was activity on the EMC property, that might be included in the DIF overlay section, and a portion of the new growth could be used to go into that fund to begin to pay for a system. Again, we're still,
I understand.
we don't know what we don't know yet. That's one of the reasons we're starting to reach out to people to say, how in the world can you, we know it's expensive. How in the world do you actually finance something like this? And so that's where we are.
Can you say what DIF means?
Oh, let's see, district, yeah, thank you.
District what?
Improvement financing. Yeah, so it's, one of the things that we've done is we've begun to identify sites that could potentially serve as portions of a system. And we're going to talk in this session about the ones that are actually publicly owned, and then there's some privately owned systems sites that we're going to talk about in executive session. But it's important that the select board understand the places that we're thinking about putting something. We have not given up on connecting to the MWRA, and I specifically asked Senator Eldridge if he could open up a door that we couldn't open up. If we can connect to the MWRA, I think that's still the best solution available, but that remains to be seen. So we go to the first site. This is I think we've had several conversations about using the golf course both for irrigation purposes and also possibly for disposal purposes. We've had conversations with the Conservation Commission and with Sudbury Valley trustees who hold the CR on that property. We haven't been thrown out yet. There is some additional questions about the status of the CR. There is a clause in there that says that you cannot dispose of wastewater on the property. The question is treated effluent wastewater, since it's very close to drinking water? And we have to sort of, I can see the lawyers back there. We got to answer that question, and that's, but that is a potential site for a discharge area. The next slide. The next slide is actually at the DPW, and in particular, the area which is currently at or west of the recycling area. It would require a substantial reconfiguration. This would be a place where we could conceivably put a plant. We need, if it could fit in an acre and a half, there's an acre and a half of land there that we could actually use. And again, these are still very preliminary ideas, but this is site we own and we have some control. The other thing is there is relatively small good distance between residential populations. Then the next site, the third site that we have that we're, again, is publicly owned. Can we go to the next slide? Is the space between the lanes on 495. And we've had, a couple of conversations with the DOT, and we haven't been thrown out of there yet either. This is in some respects of the publicly owned sites, the one that would be the best from an impact perspective, because it's a long way from, you got highways as buffer zones. The soils might be okay. It's not ideal in terms of a location because it's on the top of a hill. So you got to pump the stuff up a hill, which costs money. But this would be a potential site that would solve a lot of problems if we can make it work.
So you get the plant and the disposal site, right? And then
Do not have to be in the same place.
so does the plant have an odor associated with it that is something where it's?
Yes.
Okay.
There's
one
no
keep
getting
away
there's-
from a more residential area, or
there's no, it's,
you can mitigate it, but it's always.
you can
there.
mitigate it, but on a warm day, if you walk through a wastewater treatment plant on a warm day, you're going to smell it. And the only question is, how far away? And, we took a tour of the Westboro plant, which is an order of magnitude bigger than what we're thinking about. They're at about 7 million gallons a day, and we're thinking on the order of 500,000 gallons. And the odor was not really noticeable at the headquarters, but if you walk out into the fields,
But the golf course was just discharge.
it's just discharge.
Where was the plant going to be?
Well, if we would think that the DPW would be one site, and we're going to talk about a couple of others in executive
And
session.
is that the area that went National Grid, or
No.
the recent project that created the new workspace, what term?
Yeah, it is.
Staging area behind the
Yeah,
recycling. Not there? Okay.
Between the recycling.
That's exactly what I think he's talking about, that area.
First, I want to predicate, this is very preliminary, but we were just kind of looking at ideas and kind of brainstorming. That location does have some area between the transfer station hopper and the recycle area.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
it would definitely, if we did something there, we're gonna have to reconfigure a bunch of things.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, there are no easy answers here.
Now, who knows what John's going to come back with, you and John are going to come back with as far as what to do with trash. But what if you came back and said, we think we shouldn't have the transfer station more? You got the whole transfer station property then, right?
That would make it, there's probably enough space there to accommodate all three things, but it will be cozy. But on the other hand, you know, this is a site we own. And, which means we don't have to acquire a site. It is not badly located. I mean, it's right on Route 9. It's actually in a relatively low spot, which is desirable from, a flow perspective. So again, these are, you know, this is what we've been poking around at. And, so these are the three sites that are publicly owned that we are at least thinking about and continuing to sort of make progress on. And that's really the, where we stand today.
All right. Does anyone want to comment further on this? Sam or no? Okay.
But the big challenge is figuring out how you're going to actually finance this thing. You know, assuming you.
All right. Well, I think we're now going to move on to reports. So I have one chair's report on the agenda. I'll add another. So I attended the pinning ceremony for Ken Franks, who's our deputy fire chief, and I was reminded at the ceremony that's our first full-time deputy fire chief. I guess there was previously a deputy chief, and it was a wonderful ceremony. There was great, you know, weather cooperated. We had great attendance from a lot of retired Southborough firefighters, and Chief Pontini gave a very nice speech, and Deputy Chief Franks also very humble, nice speech. It was a great ceremony. It was great for the department. And second, I just wanted to thank Mark and Vanessa for putting together the employee appreciation breakfast that we had. That was one day after the last meeting, so on June 18th, and we had good attendance from the select board there. It's always a nice opportunity for us to spend some time with employees. And Al, I think you've got a couple of members' reports.
Yeah, I'm going to hold off on the NERI survey because I reached out to Matt Probst, and he's currently unavailable, so we'll hold off on that one.
I know Laura has been appointed from.
Yes, I do.
They've done
Yes.
that officially.
Yep. And that's the other person I need to now connect with. The transfer station, I think we all received a email from Mr. Gulbenkian about illegal uses, and there's been, additional discussion along those lines. I'd like to gather some data because, this has been sort of a nagging complaint for decades in terms of, I'd like to understand how many people, drive up that road that don't have a sticker prominently displayed on their car. I don't know whether we have a serious problem or whether this is just an occasional annoyance. And what I've suggested to Mark is that we mount a camera of some sort, and quite literally, take a sampling of times and then have somebody just go through and say, does that car have a sticker? Does it not have a sticker? Sticker, no sticker. And I think, that would at least give us some baseline data as to, do we really have a problem or not? I know it's just sort of a nagging thing that's been around for decades. And so I'd like to task Mark with just making that happen.
Can I just piggyback on that? I agree with Al. And it is on my radar screen. One of the things that I'm planning on doing is having one of the senior work-off people just sit there and keep a tally, not intervene, but it's a good use of the
It's a good idea.
we do suspect that there is an abuse, two levels of abuse. That's one, using it without a sticker. The second is we suspect that there are individuals that have commercial use of the facility that, proving that is one thing, but I'm having the operator document activity so that I can make a report to the selectmen at a later date.
Yeah, I think let's just gather some data and figure out whether it really is a problem.
Okay, and then Mark?
Okay, thank you. Just one clarification. Appreciate the kudos for the breakfast, but really that goes to Vanessa and to Melanie and Katie in our office. So oftentimes I'm the one sitting here, so I want to make sure it
Okay.
gets to where it is, so my tomorrow morning is easier. I do want to give you it's kind of setting the table for there's been a discussion at the June 17th Personnel Board meeting. Personnel Board has been taking a look at trying to find a way to do some compensation review or make some compensation adjustments outside of a paying class study. As you know, last town meeting said they didn't want to fund a paying class study early. It is scheduled to be done next year, so you'll see the same article or a study come back in the spring. And Personnel Board had voted to say, we really don't want to spend any money. So they looked at me and said, what do you think? And I said, well, now we're having a hard time balancing the objective and the subjective. And so I work with Brian Ballantyne and Jason Malinowski to try to put together a couple of things. The Personnel Board took a couple of votes at their June 17th meeting. The first vote was to address those people who have been with the town for 7 years or more and try to do something for them based on the longevity piece. If you've been with the town for 7 years or more, you would move up to the midpoint in the range. A lot of people are still down in the lower ends of the range. That would affect about 11 people. The second item that they did was to consolidate the business administrator 1 and 2 classifications. Personnel Board has heard, over the past couple of years, there really is no difference in the job descriptions. One's a grade 4, one's a grade 5. And so Personnel Board voted, and again, these were unanimous votes, to collapse business administrator 1 and 2 into a single business administrator classification in grade 5. That would allow some of the grade 4 employees to move up into grade 5, and there would be some level of adjustment for about 8 employees. There is going to be some correspondence coming from Personnel Board on this to you because, again, they took these votes. There is no funding source. So they are going to hand it to the Select Board for you to figure out how to handle next steps. The one question I had from the chair was, do you want to see them in person or would you like a written report to consider this? So that's something I don't need an answer now, but you can think about, or you can give me an answer now.
Go ahead.
And so I'm not going to get into the detail and everything tonight. That will all be forthcoming, but I did want to let you know that this is something that the Personnel Board did at their last meeting, and you'll be seeing shortly.
Okay, but to make the 2 changes,
Yes.
move 7 years and up to midpoint
Yes,
and combine VA 1 and 2,
yes,
that's still an adjustment that would be made at a town meeting in the SAP bylaw, correct?
correct,
And then on top of that, there'd be a cost to it that you would then fund as part of that.
correct.
Okay.
They are suggesting that the change be made effective January 1st of 26. So it would be a prospective change if you did something in the fall town meeting. Because they did look at potentially making it retroactive back to July 1st or simply doing the half year and doing it from January 1st forward.
So that is something that is coming.
And the rough cost of the.
$38,000.
For the whole thing, both of
The whole
them.
thing.
So I would vote for a written report.
Fair enough.
It's one person.
Well, we just put it on a members.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's
it's
more,
not
it was
report.
more informative. I just wanted that one piece of information as.
We've got to decide whether to put it on the fall town
Yeah.
meeting warrant at some point.
All right.
Thank you.
Next, does anyone have any holds on the consent agenda?
I had one, where'd it go? Carla, is that why you're here tonight?
Wow.
She's still celebrating year end.
Okay, I wanted to hold. Okay. Hold A,
Yep.
June 11th. I didn't look at June, I didn't have time for June 17th. I did 11th. I didn't do 17th. I hope somebody did.
Yeah, I looked at this, both of them.
So hold, you need to hold it 17th also?
No,
Okay,
no.
so hold 11th. And then, hold B.
Okay.
And since Carla's here, hold, I and J.
Okay. Any other holds? So Kathy, you're okay on the open session meeting minutes for June 17?
I didn't read them. So I have no idea what's,
So will you want to just hold that? Okay,
well,
all right.
unless somebody else did them.
I move that the board approve consent agenda items C, D, E, F, G, and H. All those in favor? Okay, so A, we'll just move them to the next meeting?
You can either do 11th tonight. I did those. Or
Okay, so I move that the board approve the June 11
I
open
gotta tell you
session.
what this, I gotta tell you what the changes are.
Okay.
Right.
You had edits on the 11th?
Yeah, I got a few on those.
Okay,
We're gonna hold the 17th.
okay, we'll hold the 17th.
Yeah, to the next time.
Yep.
Okay, so, line 20. I don't remember, this is what we did. It says, ask the town moderator to create a charter committee to investigate potential ways to streamline the town's organizational structure. I know we brought Paul into it. We also brought Paul into it with what Tim's going to do to work on making town meeting more efficient. But in the end, we decided to, first of all, see what Tallerman's office has as far as maybe a model, structure first, and then possibly apply for the, grant to get some funding, to get some help, to help us structure it if he doesn't have a good idea of how to do this. But I don't think we agreed that we were going to have the moderator create a charter committee.
Yeah. So what have we just said on line 20? Just say investigate potential ways to streamline the town's organizational structure.
That would be good. So Bridget just cut the first part out and just said, the goal is to investigate potential ways. Start it there, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I'll take care of that one. Then go down to line 38. Route 9 to promote commercial development and increase the commercial property tax base. We're not going to reduce taxes. We're going to try to spread them out more. Okay, then on line 53, the board agreed to solicit bids for a new health insurance consultant. So you're adding a new health and get rid of services after the word consultant. So the board agreed to solicit bids for a new health insurance consultant to review. Then on line 60, Mr. Fling. So Mr. Fling will speak with the moderator to discuss ways to make town meeting more user-friendly. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Hamilton will further explore a bylaw to allow an overall increase or decrease to the budget at town meeting. And that's it.
Are there any other edits? I move that the board approve the June 11, 2025 open session meeting minutes as amended.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, so we'll just move the 17th to the next meeting. And Kathy, you had a hold on the animal control services bid.
Yeah, so if you remember the last meeting, we were presented with a new contract that was quite a large increase from the current contract. So Mark has gone back to them and come up and has negotiated a much more favorable new contract for 3 years. However, the first year, fiscal 26 is still 3,000 and change more than what we've approved for the fiscal year 26 budget at annual town meetings. So we're starting off in the hole still with that. So there's gonna, on it, we're starting off with an interdepartmental transfer that we actually know about this. So doesn't qualify for reserve fund transfer. We know about it. This is not an emergency or something we didn't know. We know it. So I just think this is a terrible thing to do, budget wise. In the private sector, you couldn't do this. You have a budget, you stick with it. If you don't, if you go over, you have to adjust something else. So I don't know. I mean, we can go ahead and approve this tonight, knowing that it's more than what we've approved. Mark knows that, he's kind of fallen on a sword that we should have gotten this number squared away before, town meeting, but we didn't. But we're starting off with a number that's already bigger than the budget that we've approved. So, we can fix it special town meeting November. We can do an interdepartmental transfer, possibly, Carla, at the end of the year. But I think it's weird going into this knowing we've got this up front. Year hadn't even started and we already know this budget is not going to be right. So that's my budget diatribe on that one.
Okay, are we good to award the bid?
Yeah, because I think if you don't, you can either go back and say, look, take the 3 and spread it out in a way that's different. So the first year works, but then that makes the third year higher. And then that means then the fourth year will be higher. So I think it costs us money to do that way. So anyway, I just think this is a very bad practice that we have done here.
I move that the board award the bid for the animal control services.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay. And then I and J.
So you can give Carla a chance to explain those.
Okay.
So she's here. She's been here all night for this.
Not even gonna sit. Does anyone have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
No.
So you got 2 reserve fund transfers that are coming out of this, it looks like.
Well,
Fire and
Jim.
clerk. Yes, yep. But I do believe that they're gonna be much less than what we anticipated earlier in the year. Yeah, they're looking better. So that's the good news.
And we're doing all that on July 15th, Andrew?
yes.
Okay.
July
With the-
15th, yeah.
yeah, with advisory. Okay.
Yep. Stay tuned. We're wrapping up the bills and payroll and I'll have the figures for you in 2 weeks.
Well, thank you for, I know it's been probably a busy last week or so.
Been busy, plenty to do.
Yep.
so, Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Carla.
I move that the board approve the consent agenda items I and J.
Second.
All those in favor? All right, so the last item on the regular open session agenda is our annual performance review of the town administrator. And it's always a little strange because we have to do this in public and, you know, at least in the private sector, he would not do performance reviews in public. But so we followed our past, you know, practice where Mark put together a written self-evaluation, looking back on, you know, goals established at the same time for FY 25, and the goals were successful negotiation of the 4 union contracts, overseeing the completion of the irrigation project for the golf course, assisting with the new fire chief onboarding, and there's one I may have forgotten here. Oh, assist the board with the analysis of the public safety staffing study once completed, which it was completed, and as everyone knows, we did add some new staffing positions in the police department. And he proposed some goals for the following year. What we've done typically is to jointly set 4 goals, 2 of them proposed by the town administrator and 2 proposed by the select board, but there's often some overlap. So thank you to of the 4 of us who have now worked with Mark for 3 years. Tim doesn't have a large enough sample size of for just 1 month to do a full performance review, but it's a solid and a positive review where we rated Mark in various categories on a scale, and they're all between meets expectations and above expectations, with the majority of them all much closer to above expectations. We have found that you've been, obviously very well organized and dependable and reliable. And I know one of the challenges, we now, having worked with you for 3 years, have an understanding of your job, all the juggling that's involved, not just of all the different departments within the town, but also all of us individually have different interests and personalities. And so I think you've done a good job with that. Also, I think you deserve some recognition for, and other members of the board complimented you on this. The rec seems to be heading in the right direction. We recognize that's been a lot of time and effort. Obviously, very different, challenging collective bargaining agreement negotiations this year than prior years. A whole set of issues had percolated up since the last time we did it 3 years ago. There was all kind of like a reckoning, and I think you handled it well. So the other areas where I think we felt collectively, things that we could continue to work on, and a lot of them has to do with just kind of the nature of town government. How can we continue to focus on becoming more efficient? We felt in the last year, more budget pressures than we have in prior years. And public communication is always a challenge. I mean, I remember it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago where we set a goal to do the newsletter, and the newsletter we've been doing it reliably. There's like a goal that's been kind of checked off and set. We think, is there something we can do to kind of take this to the next level? So before we get into goals, open up is Marguerite, anything you'd like to share?
No, well, yes, actually, because I talked to you this morning in your office, and I think that the newsletter is a good step. I would also suggest that we revisit the town website to see if we can make it a little more literally user-friendly as opposed to seeming more bureaucratic, which I think it is currently. And I think Jay mentioned to me tonight that Montijo, that there's going to be revisions on the website coming up. And then I would like it if Mark could turn his considerable diplomatic skills to creating a website that's more welcoming to residents. That sounds like stupid. It sounds like marketing, which is not what I mean it to be. But I think the website would be since people do go on it all the time, it could use a little, what's the word I want? Help in being easier to use and more welcoming. I've said that 3 times, but you get the idea. Okay.
Kathy?
So I'm not going to do goals yet. I just want to kind of talk about
Sure.
overall
Yeah.
review. So my ratings were higher than what we see here. So I just want to make that clear. I gave Mark pretty much mostly 4s, maybe a 5 or 2. So I know Mr. Purple very well. I've known him for a long, long time. I think he does an excellent job keeping the day-to-day process, which is a lot, going in this office, and handling what comes to the door when you never know what it's going to be. Just until you sit here, you just don't realize what all can go wrong as far as the town government. So I give him kudos. He is organized. The things that are important to us, he keeps going. So he's an administrator. He's not a manager. That's what you expect of an administrator. So I think he does a great job with that. I think he does a very good job dealing with the problems that have come up, especially personnel. And we've had some doozies this past year. So I think you do a really good job there. I think you are very even tempered. And I say again, it's got to be very difficult to deal with the select board, the ever changing select board, and all the various personalities and all the various differences between the members as far as what they want, and you do it with a smile on your face. I'm not sure what you really think, but that's not relevant. But you do it, and whatever we want, you usually are very accommodative. So I appreciate that too. I am going to, the goals that I suggested, I think the ones you suggested, so we're in the same, boat as far as that goes. But I do think you do a good job, and I appreciate the hard work, and I appreciate that there is so much more to your job than meets the eye until you really sit here and understand all you have to do. So, I do appreciate what you've done.
Tim, I know you've been on the job now for about a month, but I believe.
Mark, you've made it easier to this point, so, I just look forward to the next couple of years.
My feedback was a little different. I think Mark in general does a fine job. I think that this board doesn't challenge our staff as much as it should, and it doesn't delegate to its staff as much as it should. There are, there are probably 10 or 12 items on our agenda today that we should be delegating to Mark. And I'd like to see Mark take the lead in saying, these are things I could take off your plate. Delegate it to me. This is, how you should charge this. We shouldn't be appointing DPW operators. And then I would like to see our staff take more leadership of some of the big challenges that we have. I chaired the town administrator bylaw committee a number of years ago when we also expanded the select board from 3 to 5. And the goal was to make the select board a board of directors, not a chief executive officers. And I don't think we have quite made that shift yet, where, I think this is the challenge for the next couple of years that, I'd like to see proposals coming from our staff that's, when we say we would like to go in a particular direction, I'd like the staff to begin to develop proposals that say, this is what you said you wanted to do. These are ways you could do it. I'm a big fan of empowering people to do things, and keep us informed. Tell us, when you think we need to be involved in the decision making. But I think this is the challenge that we have for the foreseeable future over the next few years until perhaps we cross the town manager Rubicon.
Mark, you have any thoughts, reflections?
Sure. So, again, thank you for all the, for the comments that, the board has made tonight. I really do appreciate it. I do think, and I think Kathy was the one that had, pointed it out, that a lot of my job, what I do, is building and maintaining relationships. And we have seen a lot of turnover on the board. And so I build a lot of relationships, and it takes a while to figure out how everybody wants things, and to try to get them right. And I don't always get them right. But that's why you're here for 3 years. So I have 3 years to figure it out. And then hopefully you stay for, another 3 years. I do appreciate, and completely welcome Mr. Hamilton's comments. There have been times over the years where the board has felt more comfortable saying, these are things we'd like to delegate to you. We don't want to see, these things. You can handle these things. I've had conversations with previous boards about doing that. Maybe that is a baby step towards, this manager paradigm that we've talked about. And I'm happy to present to you a list of those items which I feel could be handled administratively, in my office, outside of a meeting, to allow the board to focus more as a board of directors and focus more on some of the bigger piece items. I do also want to acknowledge that, as I alluded to earlier tonight, I just happen to be here every meeting. And so when things go well or things go bad, let's focus on the good. It's me that, well, thank you for doing this. Thank you for that. But I do want to say it is all about team. If we succeed, we all succeed. And if we fail, we all feel it. So we're only as good as the people we have. We've got great department heads. I've got a great assistant manager sitting over there who does an excellent job. Even in this shallow, pool of talent that we find from municipal positions, we continue to find good people. We appointed a good person tonight, to help fill the program position down at Senior Center. We should have a really good person to present to you in 2 weeks for outreach coordinator for the Senior Center. It's really a team effort, and I appreciate the collaboration that the board has given, and I know will continue to over the coming year. Sometimes my goals write themselves. I think the rec and health insurance are things that were going to happen anyway. I appreciate you making them goals because they're going to take an awful lot of time. I will say that the RFP for health consultant services is almost ready to hit the streets. So we will have that out. I've got the green light from Northborough and almost green light from the school. They're giving a final review. But everybody is marching in lockstep on that. So we'll begin that process and see if we can have some tangible results that'll impact our 27 budget. That is the goal, to be able to do something that is going to help us for 27. So I'll stop there, but I appreciate it and I look forward to the coming year. So thank you.
All right, and you want to talk a little bit about your proposed goals?
The two goals, so historically, we've looked at 4 goals for me. I propose 2 and the board proposes 2. It appears that rec and health insurance, and I actually like the way that they were laid out. Can't remember where but kind of breaking up the health insurance goal, in terms of the pieces with, starting with the consultant, focusing on options and being able to look at implementation. This is the year the school contracts are up. So there may be some ability to do some things. It may involve some impact bargaining on my side.
Are you at the table for that contract?
I was at the table for that contract in 2012, 13, when we did the plan design changes for the school. I've not been back to the table since. We used to rotate when Charles Gabron was here. We'd rotate 1 year I would sit in, 1 year Northborough would sit in, and then go back and forth. I've not been back in negotiations since then.
And we don't know why?
No. I'm happy to be part of them.
Well, I'm the one that did that breakout as far as.
Yeah.
So let me just, and let's see, we got, how many town employees we have here too? Okay, so as Brian just told me, Kathy, municipal government is not like the private sector, so, you can get used to it. But I do not understand how the municipal world can have no deductibles, hardly any co-payments. So I really want you to roll up your sleeves on this one with a health consultant and just really look at challenging the whole thing as far as the structure goes, because I do believe those 2 things would reduce our cost a lot. When an employee has to contribute something, they are sometimes a little bit more stringent as far as what they do. That's why you have co-payments. That's why you have contributions, and when they have to share in the costs. So I do want that to be at least considered as far as this goes, as far as the new plan goes. And again, the biggest group of employees is the schools. So I really wish I want you to be part of that discussion, even if it's just with Greg, to understand that we really do need to try to drive some changes in this contract this year as far as health insurance goes. We're 75-25 now. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know what everybody else is doing. That's pretty typical in the private sector though, too. So it's not like it's, so that may need it to stay. I don't know if you can go lower than that, but we've just got to find a way. That number, we cannot have any more 25% year-over-year increases as far as that kind of thing goes. So that's very important to me that you really dig in and roll up your sleeves on that one. So I'm trying to be very specific about what's in that goal, right? Get a better consultant and start looking at truly changes for both the active and retiree. Al and I've talked about how we're kind of perplexed about why we pay so much for retiree, given what we know we pay for he's got Part C, I've got traditional. So let's look at everything from A to Z and see if we
Mhm.
can't find a way to truly pull some money out of the cost of that.
I think we'd like to, we really don't want to give the new consultant any governors. It's like, let's look at this fresh. The other thing too is the school contracts are a little different than the town contracts. Contracts specify certain copays for certain things, which limits what you can do. So obviously, this is a good time to be looking at things like this because the contracts will be open.
And, look at things like HSAs to support this, have a, higher deductible, we have the HS. So there's lots of ways to design this to truly maybe save everybody money, the employee too, but just start from scratch as far as
Oh,
looking
you
at.
look like you
I
want
agree.
to jump in here or.
No, I agree with Kathy. I think, I was baffled by the retiree programs given, what I pay for what I think is a very good plan.
Mm.
And so, I've had a couple of different plans and they're all far less expensive than what we're paying for. And they were all, took care of my needs at a very reasonable cost. So, yeah, I think we might want to also consider setting a target for what we would like to spend for healthcare. So that, because it's always an opportunity. If you give somebody a blank sheet of paper, you're gonna end up with some very expensive options. And so I think keeping a tight rein on that process is important.
So I do think it makes sense of the goals that you had suggested, that health insurance, and that's where, Al, you're talking about delegating. I mean, I think that this would be something that's just kind of your charge to run and come back to us with a solution that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but truly try to participate in the school contract because that's where your big number is.
Yep. And then staying involved in the rec as well. And of the goals that,
Are we can we stick on that one for a second? As far as-
Yeah.
Okay, so if everybody remembers what Mark told us on Friday, as far as the rec goes, so they got 8.4, 8.2?
8.4.
8.4, they think they need 20 million in total to totally build it out, do the equipment, do the tower, et cetera.
Yep.
But this is what we're, how do you bid on it? If you don't have the money, he says, oh, the 8.4 will cover the cost of the building itself. It's the other 12 will do other things, so they can bid it separately. So I just want to make sure we stay on top of this, right? So this is on you to make sure that you don't come back to us and say, oh, guess what? The towns have got to now start contributing capital. So what we want to see is the state to pay for every bit of this from soup to nuts, right? And then continue to try to maybe expand it so the operations down the road get spread among, a bigger base again too. So we save some money once we start paying for it and the grant goes away so that annual cost also goes down. So those are big things to do, but totally looking at you to manage that process from beginning to end.
The nice thing is that for at least the past 4 or 5 meetings, and I think it's going to be this way going forward, we've had at least 1 or 2 representatives from State 911 attending our board meetings. And they manage the grant process. So they are giving input into the grant awards based on our construction schedule, based on our timelines. And they feel that this 8.4 is where we will need to be to get to where we are looking at on our construction schedule in this grant cycle. And then the residual of the request, would come in the following tranche next year. So if there have been adjustments that they did make for us this past year, when the new executive director came on a little bit early, we had to make some adjustments, which they helped us with in order to fund the salary. So they're right there with us in the room when these decisions are being made. So they'll help us keep everything honest.
okay. Well, I was going to suggest, of the different goals that we had put together, are there a couple that you think are achievable, measurable, that you would be interested in working on? I mean, I think Marguerite's suggestion about working on the website is one that we could make some progress on. And I'm also still, I know it was one of the ones you had suggested, implementing the DLS financial review suggestions.
I think that one's more of a Brian than Mark. And remember, we had started this process and it's gotten dropped.
Yeah.
We already started on the policy, right? And we got, I think, 8 out of 17 done or 8 out of 18. We got the debt one done. There may have been 9, but there's still at least half of them to go. So we got to pick that back up. Al was assigned, Andrew Pfaff was assigned. So we got to pick that back up. So I still think that's more in Brian's court than it is Mark. And then we haven't touched the management piece of it.
Correct. Well, so one of the things that came out of the board's discussions of your goal setting for the year was a lot of discussion about review of our organizational structure, you know, and what we do and how we do and how we can do this more efficiently, and, you know, where we may be able to realize some savings. That financial management study from DLS, I think, is part of that. And, you know, and I'm happy to, you know, to talk about, you know, going down that road for a goal and to figure out, you know, how we can move that forward. I think that Ms. Hale was the one that brought up, you know, whether we wanted to do you know, an organizational study, do it as part of a community compact grant. Community compact doesn't open until August. You're not going to get an award probably, you know, until late August, early September. Time will have passed. There is the ability, if you wanted to do this now, we do have, you know, funds in that consulting article, you know, if we wanted to go and get something done now, so we can look and try and look at some thoughts of implementation, you know, coming this fall and winter, so we can have a chance to try to make, you know, maybe some change, you know, in this coming year.
Who got assigned that goal?
Al and me.
So that's a thought. I mean, you know, I think a lot of, you know, my goals should trickle down from yours. So we did talk an awful lot about organizational structure and, you know, I'm happy to, you know, to make that one of my goals. So that's up to the board.
I'm sticking my foot in my mouth this one, but right now I'm concerned about the building department. And I know that that's part of the over picture, the overarching thing, but I think right now I'm worried about the building. It's in a very fragile state. And anyway, I think you can look at the macro structure for the town, but also I think the building department will be a good place to focus.
So I'm exploring options on that now as well, and hopefully can have something back to the board, you know, in the next month or so to try to give you some options as to, you know, where we might be able to go with that.
So website does need to be revamped. It's just a fact. And all you gotta do is look around every other town and ours looks kind of like our downtown compared to every other downtown. So that I think needs, so I'm all for that one. I'm all for figuring out what the building department should look like as far as what we need. But the bigger one is one what we just kind of jumped off. So Al and Andrew have a very difficult goal. Why not put Mark on that with him, which is what identify 4 business processes that can be automated, begin consolidation of departments. I'm not sure who submitted those
I
two,
think
but it
that
all
is
goes
something that's a
together.
little bit different, and I think on our select board goals, we had identified them as.
Yeah, there's, there are 2 pieces to, at least I view, there's 2 pieces to
Yep.
that goal. One is the overall structure of the town.
Yep.
And that is a matter that I think reasonably, you need a committee probably appointed by the moderator, but you know, that's something we had talked about. And then there is the piece that we own, and including, you know, all the little silos. And I think that's the other piece that I think we need to come up with a framework for how we deal with both of those things. I wrote the one about identifying the business processes. And I think that's unrelated. It's partially related. It's all intertwined. Yeah, I started out trying to create a chart of the org chart of the town of Southborough. And it's gonna end up looking like a spider web. And
You know, Sam's already got that, right? You know, he's got one.
Yeah,
that he
I-
spent
I-
a long time on, and it does look like a spider web.
yeah,
You still
I-
have that, Sam? Do you still have that one that folds, you know, the one you taped all the sheets
Yeah.
together? Yeah. I
Well,
thought
should
that
we
was
just
great.
maybe, do you think we should just kind of, I mean, it makes it a little vaguer as a goal,
well,
streamline business processes and
You
organizations.
could do that because that's specific. You
Yeah.
could say Mark's got 4,
Well, that's
3,
one
2,
where we
whatever,
really have
right?
yeah,
more collaboration.
And
identify.
then you two continue the work. See, I don't think the two things you said are separate. To me, this town government restructuring includes the silo piece of it.
Right.
So you two still do that, which I think is the hardest goal we have
Yeah.
bitten off this year. Mark can help, but let Mark specifically work on the 4 business processes that can
Yeah.
be,
I have it as a 4A. So
what?
goal, you know, so 4 goals, I put it as 4A.
Oh, we can do 5.
Yeah. Okay.
We can do 5. So if we did the billing department, we did the website as far as ours, and then this one, the 4 business process, that's our 3, and then the 2 that you talked about, that's 5. Pretty good ones, I think. Has everybody had a role in those goals? I don't know who submitted what, so.
I think where we've landed makes sense. Do you agree?
I think so.
Okay,
I think it makes sense.
all right. Well, then with that. No, we just discussed it. I move that the board enter.
We should probably do public comment before.
We actually have adjusted we had public comment at the beginning and it's not on the.
Okay, sorry.
Okay,
I hope Bridget got those 5 goals, and we were talking pretty quickly. So Bridget, let us.
Mark has also wrote them down.
Yes.
All right, I move that the board enter into executive session per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, and not return to open session to consider 1, the potential purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, exemption 6, and 2, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, exemption 3, as the chair has determined that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the town's negotiating position. So I think we take this vote by. First-
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I would ask that Mr. Stivers be allowed to stay for the first part, as he is a member of the wastewater committee and is heavily involved in that matter. Can he be trusted?
Yeah. I don't have a problem with that. Yeah,
We have people come to executive session
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
time besides the board.
okay. So I made the motion. I think it needs a second.
Second.
All right, so roll call vote. Myself, aye. Marguerite?
Cook is I.
Aye.
Hamilton, I.
Okay.
I'll talk back.
Hold on. We got one more person still here.